Now 5 years old, the triplets Naruto, Menma, and Mito had already begun their training as shinobi. One morning, Minato called Naruto aside, his voice firm. "Teach Menma," he ordered. "Help him catch up." Naruto, as always, obeyed without complaint. "All right." During their training, Menma grew frustrated. Despite using the same techniques, he couldn't keep up with Naruto's natural skill. "You're hiding something," Menma snapped. "Give me the secret scrolls you're using." Naruto blinked, confused. "I don't have any secret scrolls. I just train with the same ones everyone else uses." Menma's eyes narrowed. "Liar! I've seen you train alone. You have something hidden. Give it to me." Naruto shook his head, calm but firm. "I really don't. If I had something special, I'd give it to you. I promise." Menma's frustration turned to resentment. A thought crossed his mind, a wicked, petty plan. "Fine," Menma muttered under his breath. "Let's see what happens now." Without warning, he clenched his fist and punched himself on his face, hard enough to leave a small bruise. A moment later, he began to wail. "Dad!" Minato appeared in a flash, alarmed. "Menma? What happened?" Menma clutched his bruised cheek, tears streaming down his face. "It was Naruto. He hit me." Naruto's eyes widened in disbelief. "What? No, I didn't. I swear." But before he could finish, Minato slapped him across the face. "Enough with the lies," Minato snapped, glaring at him. Naruto stood frozen, too stunned to speak. The sting on his cheek was nothing compared to the ache in his heart. Behind Minato's back, Menma smirked. And from that day forward, he used the same trick again and again, hurting himself, crying out, and blaming Naruto. Each time, Naruto was punished. And each time, no one questioned Menma's word. Naruto's home was never truly home. By the time the triplets turned 7, the difference in how they were treated had become undeniable. Their mother, Kushina, would cheerfully ask Menma and Mito every day, "What do you two want for dinner? Ramen? Curry? I'll make whatever you like." But she never once asked Naruto. Not even once. If he sat at the table, no one noticed. If he spoke, no one listened. If he was hurt, no one cared. To them, Naruto wasn't even a part of the family anymore. He was a shadow, a ghost. And the village, they were even worse. Rumors had spread. False whispers that Naruto was the true demon, that he had corrupted chakra, that he was dangerous. The people hated him for reasons even they couldn't explain. One rainy evening, Naruto was walking home alone when a group of villagers cornered him in an alley. They surrounded him with cruel smiles, hate in their eyes. "He's not human," one spat. "Why would the Hokage even keep a thing like you?" said another. They beat him, kicked him, cursed him, dragged his body through the mud, and then a man, dressed in dark robes and reeking of alcohol, crouched beside him with something in his hand. It was a rotting human finger. "You're a demon, right?" he sneered. "Demons feed on humans. So go ahead." He shoved the finger into Naruto's mouth, forcing it down as Naruto choked and gagged. "Eat it. Show us what you really are." Tears mixed with blood on Naruto's face. His body trembled, his heart pounding with pain and confusion and rage. No one came to help. No parent, no the rain, and silence. Unbeknownst to the villagers, the finger they forced into Naruto's mouth was no ordinary human remains. It was not rotting flesh from the dead. It was something far more terrifying. It was a fragment of the indestructible, a cursed relic that had withstood time itself. It was the finger of Ryaman Sukuna, the king of curses. A being once feared by all. A being whose name shattered nations and brought sorcerers to their knees. To the weak, Sukuna was a monster. To the strong, he was a god. In the age when he walked the earth, Sukuna slaughtered entire armies and toyed with death as though it were a game. His mastery over cursed energy was unparalleled. His intelligence inhuman. A true prodigy, one born of chaos, cruelty, and absolute domination. And now, that power slumbered inside a broken boy. A prodigy of prodigies, abandoned by family, hated by the village, and pushed to the edge of despair. As Naruto lay in the mud, coughing, bleeding, and trembling from the pain, something inside him shifted. The cursed energy in Sukuna's finger recognized him, not as a host to consume, but as a kindred soul. Prodigy, just like him. And so, from the deepest pit of cursed power, Sukuna stirred. So, this is the body I've been fed into? The voice echoed in the void of Naruto's mind, deep, cold, amused. How ironic. Naruto's eyes widened. His heart pounded not from fear, but from something else. Something dark, something ancient, something powerful. In that moment, the king of curses met the child forgotten by gods and men alike. And it was only the beginning. Sukuna had awoken, but he was far from the godlike being he once was. His cursed energy was depleted, a mere fragment of his true self. So, for now, he remained quiet. He watched, he listened, he observed the boy who unknowingly became his vessel. From the moment he stirred inside Naruto, Sukuna felt it. A spark. No, a flame, raw, wild, untamed power. The boy wasn't just gifted. He was a prodigy, the kind that appeared once in a millennium. And what did Sukuna see? A child who trained alone in the dark. A child who smiled through pain, who bore his suffering in silence. A child beaten by villagers, slapped by his own father, and ignored by a mother who never once asked him what he liked to eat. 3 years passed. Sukuna said nothing. But he saw everything. He saw how Minato, a man once known as a genius himself, believed every lie Menma told, never once questioning why the bruises only ever appeared when Naruto was around. He watched as Naruto was slapped, humiliated, silenced, day after day. And then there was Menma. Sukuna examined him, watched him, measured him. And what did he find? Trash. Not because Menma lacked talent. Sukuna never hated the untalented, as he saw in his days those with no talent faced him toe-to-toe. He hated those who refused to become strong when they had resources. If Menma had trained, if he had clawed his way up from weakness, Sukuna might have respected him, might have tolerated him. But instead, he saw a lazy brat, spoiled by praise and drunk on undeserved affection. Pampered, arrogant, empty. He has nothing, Sukuna thought, and yet, they give him everything. It was enough to sicken even a demon. But Naruto had everything Sukuna once did. The genius, the loneliness, the fury, and now the king of curses was inside a boy who would one day make the world kneel. Not by fate. Not by privilege. But by power. What Sukuna couldn't understand at first was this. Naruto was human. Not a cursed spirit. Not a reincarnated monster. Just a boy. And yet, he was treated as something less than dirt. Sukuna, who had lived for over 1,000 years, who had seen kings and beggars, gods and demons, he was a master at reading people. Emotions, lies, true intent. He had seen hatred in many forms. Fear, envy, disgust. But what Naruto endured was different. His parents never spoke their hatred aloud. They never said the words. But Sukuna saw it, in every glance, in every choice, in every silence. Minato, the great fourth Hokage, looked at Menma, who held half of the 9 tails, and saw a legacy. A boy to be proud of. A symbol. And when he looked at Naruto, nothing. No pride. No care. Only the burden of a child he couldn't understand and perhaps, somewhere deep down, resented. Then there was Kushina, the mother. She didn't beat him. She didn't yell. But she did something worse. She turned her back like nothing happened. Day after day, she asked Menma and Mito what they wanted for lunch, what they wanted to wear, how their training was going. But never once did she ask Naruto. As if he wasn't even there. As if he didn't exist. And through it all, Sukuna watched. The only one who didn't treat Naruto like a ghost was Mito, his sister. She didn't hate him. She didn't lie about him. She even greeted him when they crossed paths in the halls. But it wasn't love. It wasn't sibling warmth. It was the same kind of distant care that a kind orphanage matron shows a child under her charge, compassion without closeness, kindness without connection. And that, in a way, hurt Naruto more than hate ever could. Sukuna, the king of curses, was baffled. Not by the hatred. Not by the injustice. But by the reasonless nature of it all. There was no curse on Naruto. No secret monster. He was a normal child, born alongside two siblings. And yet he was treated as if he shouldn't have been born at all. Fools, Sukuna thought bitterly. They've chosen to mock the storm before it has even begun to thunder. When the triplets joined the Ninja Academy, the entire village celebrated Menma and Mito as heroes. They were praised for containing the Nine Tails, hailed as the protectors of the village. Everywhere they went, people smiled, bowed, and offered gifts or praise. Naruto, however, was treated like an outcast. While his siblings were admired, he was hated, scorned and whispered about as if he were a threat rather than a child. At the academy, Menma quickly became popular, especially with the girls. He was constantly surrounded by fangirls who adored him, and he soaked in the attention, indulging in their praise like a child in a candy store. At the academy, Naruto's talent didn't go unnoticed. He was a prodigy, his scores were always at the top, and his abilities surpassed most of his peers. Yet, for some strange reason, his grades never reflected his true potential. Every report card showed Naruto barely passing, despite his obvious skill and dedication. Confused and frustrated, he approached his teachers, asking why his marks were so low. They couldn't offer any explanation, and their unease only deepened his suspicions. It wasn't until later, when he discovered the truth, that everything became clear. Naruto found that his father had swapped his grades with Menma's. Menma, who had barely passed, now had the marks of someone who had excelled. The shock hit him like a punch to the gut. For years, Naruto had believed that his parents favored his siblings because of the Nine Tails sealed within them. He thought that maybe Menma needed extra support due to his lack of talent, and Mito's talent only made sense in their eyes. He'd accepted that, convinced it was the reason they didn't acknowledge his achievements. He had thought that he, too, could earn their love if he worked hard enough. But now, with the discovery of the grade swap, everything changed. Naruto finally understood the painful truth. His parents never truly loved him. They hadn't favored Menma and Mito out of necessity or love. They had simply chosen to ignore him. And for the first time, Naruto realized that he could no longer hope for something that had never been there. The love he'd wished for, the recognition he craved, was never going to come. It was time to let go of the fantasy. Naruto was consumed by anger. The betrayal he felt when he discovered that his father had swapped his grades with Menma's was too much to bear. Furious at the injustice, Naruto made a decision. He would deliberately fail. If his father didn't value his true abilities, then he wouldn't bother to show them anymore. He passed only by the barest of margins, just enough to scrape through. When Minato saw Naruto's grades, he slapped him, furious that his son had failed to meet expectations. His anger was palpable, but Naruto felt nothing. No shame, no remorse, only resentment. Meanwhile, Menma failed several subjects, despite his fanfare and the praise he continued to receive. But that didn't matter. His failure was never met with anger or punishment. Naruto's mother remained silent, as always. She didn't defend him, didn't say a word about the unfairness of it all. Her indifference cut deeper than any slap. In that silence, Naruto's resentment grew, a burning rage that threatened to consume him. He couldn't understand why his family treated him this way, and he began to realize they never truly cared. As Naruto's heart filled with anger, frustration, and hatred, Sukuna observed from within. For the past 3 years, Sukuna had been silently gathering cursed energy from Naruto's pain and suffering. The negativity, the resentment, the hatred that had built up within the boy, it was exactly what Sukuna needed. And now, with the newborn resentment rising in Naruto's heart, Sukuna felt the power surge. The energy was becoming palpable, swirling around Naruto like a storm ready to erupt. Sukuna saw his opportunity. The prodigy he had been waiting for was ready. At the academy, while Menma basked in the adoration of his classmates for his high grades, Naruto was left to silently endure the unfair treatment. The praise for Menma grew louder each day, but there was one person who saw through the facade: Sasuke Uchiha. Sasuke, ever the perceptive observer, noticed something that others didn't. He could see the true potential in Naruto. He recognized the raw talent that Naruto possessed. In fact, Sasuke began to believe that Naruto was more of a prodigy than even his older brother, Itachi. Yet, despite Naruto's obvious skill, his grades remained low, and Sasuke couldn't understand why. One day, while Sasuke was observing Naruto, he saw the boy filled with hatred and anger, directed squarely at Menma. The fury in Naruto's eyes was unmistakable, and Sasuke could sense the deep frustration simmering beneath the surface. Sasuke, unsure whether he should intervene, hesitated. His Uchiha pride prevented him from reaching out. It was a strange feeling, seeing someone so talented, yet so angry, and knowing that his pride held him back from understanding Naruto's pain. As the days passed, Naruto continued to barely pass, deliberately so. He refused to budge to the demands of his ex-father, Minato, or anyone else who tried to pressure him into achieving more. Naruto wasn't interested in meeting anyone's expectations anymore. He had made up his mind. If his family didn't care, then neither would he. Naruto was sleeping peacefully, his breath steady, his body finally at rest after another exhausting day at the academy. But suddenly, the calm darkness of sleep shifted, twisted, until he found himself standing in an eerie, unfamiliar space. It was quiet, dim, and filled with an overwhelming sense of power. A voice echoed through the stillness. "Well, I finally get to meet the prodigy of prodigies," the voice said, amused and deep with an ancient resonance. Naruto spun around, eyes sharp. "Who are you?" he asked, immediately on guard, taking a fighting stance. The man in front of him chuckled, eyes gleaming like blood-soaked rubies. "Don't fret, brat. I'm not here to fight. Not yet. I came to talk." Naruto narrowed his eyes. "Then talk. I don't have time for games." The stranger grinned. "Fiery one, aren't you? I like that. Very well. I've seen how you've been treated. How your so-called father swapped your grades. How the villagers beat you, hate you for nothing. I've watched for years." Naruto stiffened. "So what do you want from me?" he asked bluntly. The man tilted his head, still smiling. "Let's just say, we're the same, you and I." Naruto frowned. "What do you mean?" The man's voice grew heavier, darker. "I was once the strongest of my era, prodigy among prodigies. For centuries, no one could match me. The weak feared me as a monster. The strong revered me as a god. And yet, despite all that, I was hated, feared. Even my parents turned their backs on me. All because I was born from a cursed spirit." He stepped closer, his aura pressing in around Naruto like a storm. "And you?" he continued, voice quiet but filled with steel. "A human boy, born innocent, gifted, unmatched, but hated, shunned, and ignored by your own family, especially that father of yours. A fool blinded by favoritism." Naruto said nothing, his fists clenched. For once, someone didn't lie to him. Someone understood. Naruto stood firm, his eyes locked on the man before him. a presence both ancient and terrifying. "What do you want?" Naruto asked, voice low but steady. Sukuna smiled, the kind of smile that held centuries of blood, pain, and pride. "Let's join hands, Naruto. Together we'll reshape this world." Naruto narrowed his eyes. "Reshape it how?" "We conquer it," Sukuna said without hesitation. "We crush those who dared look down on us. We make them crawl. The weak will serve, and the strong will reign. No more lies. No more masks." Naruto's expression turned colder. "I'm not interested." Sukuna's eyes darkened slightly. "Why not? Look around you. The village treats you like a disease. Your own father erased your achievements. Your mother pretends you don't exist. And your siblings," he chuckled, "they bask in the light you were denied." Naruto clenched his fists but didn't break eye contact. "I know all that." "Then take my power," Sukuna urged. "Become the strongest. Make them pay." Naruto shook his head. "I don't want to rule over anyone, and I don't want to become like them, or like you." That made Sukuna pause. "Even with all that power," Naruto continued, "you were still alone, weren't you? All that strength, and no one to share it with. That's not power. That's a cage." Sukuna's smirk faded for the first time in centuries. "You're more interesting than I thought," he muttered. Naruto looked Sukuna in the eye, his expression unreadable. "I'd rather be content with even on person who loves me for who I am rather than for my power and live alone all the days of my life," he said calmly. "You say you're the strongest, but even with all that power you were still lonely, weren't you?" Sukuna didn't respond right away. Then he let out a dry, mirthless chuckle. "You're right. I once met a boy, normal, untalented, nothing special. But he worked harder than anyone. And one day he defeated me, not with strength, but with heart. He showed me what it means to be human, what it means to love." Naruto's eyes widened for a moment, but he quickly masked his surprise. Sukuna stepped closer, his voice colder. "If you had agreed to my offer when I first woke up, I would have killed you without hesitation." The silence that followed was heavy, but Naruto broke it. "Then why ask me now?" Sukuna's gaze flickered. "Because you're like me. But not entirely." Naruto sighed, his tone steady. "The village? Yeah, they've treated me like dirt. My parents? They chose to ignore me. But there are a few people, just a few, who've treated me like a real person. And besides," he looked up, "Konoha isn't the whole world. I believe there are places out there where people aren't like this, where they won't hate me just for existing." Sukuna raised an eyebrow. "You're still holding on to hope?" "Not hope, curiosity," Naruto said. "Before I destroy anything, I want to see what else this world has to offer." After silence, "I want to create a world where everyone is treated equally, fairly," Sukuna said, his voice steady, but not cold. Naruto narrowed his eyes. "That's not what you said before. You talked about conquest, enslaving the weak." Sukuna gave a dry chuckle. "Yes, that was my first instinct. It always has been. When you're hated your whole life, hunted, shunned, spat on, it's easy to see domination as the only way to be acknowledged. But—" He paused. For a moment, he looked less like the king of curses and more like a man who had seen too much. "Even when I was at the height of my power, I was alone," Sukuna said quietly. "No matter how many bowed before me, no one stood beside me." Naruto said nothing, but his fists clenched slightly. "At the end, when I was dying, I realized something." Sukuna's gaze didn't waver. "Power means nothing if there's no one to share it with. In that last moment I decided, if I ever got another chance, I'd try to understand. Not just strength, but love, connection, maybe even redemption." Naruto looked at him, surprised. Not because Sukuna admitted it, but because he understood it. That loneliness, that ache of being surrounded by people yet unseen. You've felt it too, haven't you? Sukuna asked. Naruto nodded slowly. The village, my so-called family, the way they treat me, yeah, I've felt it. And yet, Sukuna said, stepping closer, you refused to destroy them, even when I offered you the power to make the world kneel. Naruto smiled faintly, not out of joy but quiet defiance. I'd rather live with a little dignity than rule in loneliness, he said. You might be strong, Sukuna, stronger than anyone, but in the end you were alone. That's not strength. That's tragedy. Sukuna was silent for a moment. Then, with a voice tinged not with malice, but something that almost sounded like respect, he murmured, maybe you're the one I've been waiting for. Naruto stood in the dimly lit void, still trying to make sense of Sukuna's offer. So what now? Naruto asked cautiously. Sukuna folded his arms. We train. Naruto blinked. What? You need to become strong, Sukuna repeated. Then we can formulate a plan. But you said you'd give me power, Naruto reminded him, brows furrowed. I did, Sukuna replied, his tone sharper now. But I don't want you to rely on me completely. You have potential, real potential, but I won't hand everything to you. Strength must be earned. Naruto hesitated, then gave a small nod. All right. And with that, the dream, or whatever it was, faded into black. He shot upright in bed, heart pounding. Morning sunlight filtered through the window. Was it a dream? It's not a dream, Brett. Naruto's eyes widened. What? The myth. It happened. It's all real, said the voice inside his head. Deep, confident, laced with a hint of amusement. Naruto scrambled to calm himself. How are we talking? Who are you? And how the hell are you inside my head? My name is Sukuna. Ryaman Sukuna, the voice answered. And I've been inside you since 3 years ago. 3 years ago? Naruto muttered. Then a memory hit him. The time an old, shady villager made him eat when he was beaten. Naruto gagged at the thought. You mean, that gross, dried-up finger? That gross finger was a fragment of my soul, Sukuna said with a grin in his tone. That's how I'm here. Naruto fell silent, deep in thought. Can you train me? Why? You said you're the strongest, right? Naruto replied, his voice steady. There was a pause, then Sukuna chuckled. Fine, I'll train you, but understand something. I won't teach you anything related to chakra or jutsu. Why not? Because I don't use chakra, Sukuna replied. I use something far older, cursed energy. It's born from negative emotions. Fear, anger, hatred, pain. It's what fuels me. Naruto clenched his fists. That sounds like something I have a lot of. Exactly. Naruto looked out the window, the village slowly coming to life under the morning sun. His path was no longer the same. He wasn't just the boy the village ignored anymore. He was the vessel of a king. And now, the real training would begin. From that day forward, Naruto trained in secret. It took weeks, months, before he could even grasp the feel of cursed energy. Unlike chakra, it resisted his control, like a wild beast snarling at the leash. But once he understood it, even a little, the growth came fast. Faster than even Sukuna expected. The day of graduation finally arrived. Naruto stood in line among the other academy students, hands in his pockets, face unreadable. The teams were announced one by one. Naruto waited, not out of excitement, but with simmering tension. And finally, Team 12, Irika called out, Naruto Uzumaki, Menma Uzumaki, Mito Uzumaki. A murmur rippled through the room. Mito lit up with joy. Yes, she whispered excitedly, turning to Menma and Naruto. We're together. Menma gave a lazy smirk, barely processing the announcement. He didn't really care who he was teamed with. As long as he could show off, it didn't matter. Naruto didn't speak. He didn't look at either of them. He clenched his fists. Of course, he thought bitterly. Of course they'd put us together. Can't even let me breathe. And your Jonin sensei, Irika continued, will be Kushina Uzumaki. Naruto's blood boiled. His eyes narrowed. Mito gasped in joy. Mama's going to be our teacher too. That's amazing. Menma looked mildly surprised, then shrugged. Naruto's knuckles whitened. Later, at the training grounds, Kushina stood before the three. The wind blew softly through the trees, the perfect day for training, for most. All right, Kushina smiled warmly. Menma, Mito, come with me. We'll begin training. Naruto stood without moving, but Kushina didn't even look his way. Come on, Mito beamed, running off with her mother and brother. Naruto stood frozen for a second. Then he turned his word, he walked away. He returned to the woods, the place where he always trained. Alone, quiet, unnoticed. He raised his hand. Faint black-red tendrils of cursed energy crackled around his fingers like living flame. He smirked bitterly. Fine, he muttered. I'll train myself. For the past month, Team 12 had done nothing but D-rank chores. Rescuing cats, pulling weeds, chasing chickens. Menma and Mito were growing frustrated, constantly whining to Kushina. This is stupid, Menma complained one evening, kicking a stone down the road. We're Uzumakis. We should be doing something real. Mito nodded, crossing her arms. We've been ready since the academy. When are we getting an actual mission? Naruto remained silent, standing a little apart from them as always. Kushina sighed. Fine. Let's speak to the Hokage. At the Hokage Tower, they entered the office to find Team 7 already present. Kakashi leaning lazily against a wall, Sasuke with arms crossed, Sakura bright-eyed, and Mina looking uninterested. Perfect timing, said Minato, Hokage's robe fluttering. You'll all be assigned a joint mission. Both teams. Mito blinked. A joint mission? You're to escort a man named Tazuna to the Land of Waves and protect him while he completes construction of a bridge. It's officially C rank. Naruto narrowed his eyes. A bridge builder? This isn't going to be simple. The two teams traveled together, Kushina and Kakashi leading the way. Naruto stayed near the rear, quiet as usual. The atmosphere was light. Mito and Sakura talked. Menma and Mina argued. Sasuke occasionally made comments. Then, Naruto's gaze locked onto something. A puddle? He thought, slowing slightly. It hasn't rained in days. His eyes sharpened. Just then, clang. Chains erupted from the puddle, wrapping around both Kushina and Kakashi. The two Jonin were pulled in with a sickening jerk and collapsed to the ground, seemingly out cold. Everyone froze. The two demon brothers emerged, their grotesque claws glinting. Mito screamed. Sakura stumbled back. One of the brothers rushed toward Tazuna with a snarl. The other turned toward Naruto, licking his blade. You're just a runt. SHHHK. A sudden slash cut through the air. The demon brother froze mid-step, eyes wide. His body slowly split in two vertically from head to groin. Clean, perfect slice. He collapsed in gruesome halves, steam hissing from the cut. Everyone stared in horror. Naruto stood motionless, his eyes dark and cold. His hand hadn't even moved. What was that? Sakura gasped. Even Kakashi, who is behind the bushes observing, looked stunned. How could he do that? I have never heard a jutsu like that. The remaining demon brother howled in rage and charged Naruto blindly. Without blinking, Naruto murmured, "Cleave and dismantle." Seichenkai. Another invisible slash. Another death. Blood misted the air. Silence fell. Even Sasuke, usually so composed, took an unconscious step back. That technique. What it is? Kushina slowly got to her feet, staring at Naruto like she was seeing a stranger. Kakashi turned to Tazuna with a solemn expression. Tell us the truth. Who are you really running from? Tazuna hesitated for a moment. Then, with a deep breath, he finally spoke. It's Gato. He's the one behind the threats. He wants me dead before I finish the bridge. If he succeed, the land of waves will crumble. Please, you have to help me. Kushina crossed her arms, her expression hardening. We can't afford to put our team in danger. You've seen how inexperienced they are. They're not ready for this kind of mission. Tazuna's eyes widened with panic, his voice shaking as he stepped forward. I'm telling you the truth. Without your help, we won't make it. You'll leave us all to die. Kakashi gave Tazuna a sympathetic look, but his words were firm. We can't risk our young shinobi's lives. This is too much for them. Tazuna's desperation grew as he dropped to his knees. Please, the villagers, the people of Wave, they're all depending on me. I can't fail them. I'll die if you leave me now. The rest of the team started to turn back toward the village, but Naruto stood there, silent, his eyes distant and unreadable. Kushina called out to him, a faint trace of concern in her voice. Naruto, come on. We're heading back. But Naruto didn't budge. His gaze remained fixed ahead, a flicker of determination crossing his features. I'll go with him. The words hung in the air, causing everyone to freeze in shock. Kushina glared at Naruto. Naruto, you can't do this. You shouldn't go without your team. Naruto raised an eyebrow, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Really? We've been Genins for a month. Have you even bothered to train me or notice me in the team? Don't preach about teamwork like a saint. It honestly sickens me to hear it from you. The group fell silent, shocked by his words. Kushina stood there, unable to believe what he had just said. Menma seized the opportunity to mock. Of course, who would bother training a loser like you? Naruto's glare sharpened, but then his expression shifted to a mocking one. Oh? Tell me, who ran off to hide behind the bushes while the rest of us protected Tazuna? And who killed the demon brothers without even lifting a finger? It's obvious, isn't it? You ran like a coward, and I killed the demon brothers without even moving. So, tell me, who's the real loser here? Menma had no response. Without another word, Naruto turned and walked alongside Tazuna. While Naruto walked alongside Tazuna, the others stood in silence, contemplating their next move. Sasuke broke the silence, turning to Kakashi. I think we should continue the mission. If we keep hiding behind the excuse that we're not ready, we'll never be ready when it truly matters. Kakashi glanced at Kushina, his expression unreadable. Mito, unable to hold back, spoke up, her disappointment evident. Mom, Sasuke's right, and I'm disappointed in you. For an entire month, you never bothered to call Naruto to train. With Mito and Sasuke leading the way, the others reluctantly followed. As they continued walking, they suddenly encountered Zabuza, the notorious rogue ninja. Kakashi and Kushina immediately stepped forward, preparing to fight him. The others, though tense, stood back, observing the battle. Naruto, however, wasn't just watching. He was carefully gauging Zabuza's strength, analyzing every move, his mind calculating the most efficient way to handle such a threat. Just as it seemed Zabuza would land a fatal blow on Kakashi, a sudden dart pierced Zabuza's back. A masked figure appeared from the shadows, swiftly grabbing the wounded rogue ninja and disappearing with him in the blink of an eye. The group stood stunned for a moment, trying to process the unexpected turn of events. Kakashi and Kushina took a moment to compose themselves, then led the team to Tazuna's house. Inside, they were greeted by Tazuna's daughter, Tsunami, who offered them hospitality and a chance to rest after the tense encounter. While they were eating dinner, the atmosphere was tense. Inari, Tsunami's son, suddenly yelled out, his voice filled with frustration. You don't know what it means to suffer. Naruto's eyes hardened, the anger bubbling up from within him. He slammed his hand on the table, his voice sharp and cutting as he snapped back. Shut up, brat. You think you're the only one in the world who's suffering. Wake up. Inari, taken aback by the outburst, remained silent for a moment, but Naruto wasn't finished. He pointed towards Kushina, his voice laced with bitterness. See that woman? My so-called pathetic mother. She never cared about me, never noticed me. She neglected me. And now look at her with her perfect little family. He then pointed at Menma, his expression cold. And that pathetic boy who looks like me, my so-called brother. All he does is bark, but there's no bite. He doesn't work hard, a lazy sloth who thinks even lifting a finger as a burden, expects everything to be handed to him on a silver platter. Naruto's eyes darkened further as he continued, his voice trembling with suppressed rage. And my so-called pathetic excuse of a Hokage? Mentioning him wanted to puke out, I don't even know why, but he hates me with a passion. That fool swapped my grades with fool so this idiot would get all the attention. When I found out what happened, I barely passed all the exams just to keep the peace. And the villagers, they're worse than all of them combined. They call me a monster, a freak. I'm just a punching bag for their frustration. The room was silent, all eyes on Naruto, who now stood there, chest heaving with the weight of his words. Tsunami, seeing the pain in his eyes, could only look on with a mixture of sympathy and understanding. Inari, though, seemed to realize the weight of Naruto's words for the first time. He couldn't speak, the anger and frustration in Naruto's voice making him question his own outlook on life. Everyone around the table was stunned into silence. Kakashi, who had always seen his sensei's family as an ideal, couldn't believe what he was hearing. Sasuke, too, was shocked. He had always wondered why Naruto had so much disdain for his brother, Menma, but now it all made sense. The weight of Naruto's words hung heavily in the air, and it was clear that none of them had fully understood the depth of his pain until now. Kushina sat there, frozen, as guilt began to wash over her in waves. She had never thought she would hear such words from her son, and now, faced with the truth, she didn't know how to respond. Kakashi, breaking the silence, finally spoke. Is it true, Kushina-san? His voice was softer than usual, tinged with the same disbelief he felt. Kushina remained silent, her gaze dropping to the table, unable to look anyone in the eye. Mito, unable to hold back her anger any longer, spoke up. Mom, tell me why you both treated Naruto like nothing. You believed Menma's lies and punished Naruto for things he didn't do. Kushina was still at a loss for words, but Mito didn't stop. Remember every time Dad hit Naruto for beating Menma? That wasn't the truth. In reality, it was this fool, she pointed at Menma, who's too lazy to work hard, who thought Naruto used some hidden scrolls and blamed Naruto for everything. And Dad believed it all and punished Naruto for nothing. And you? Mito's voice wavered, but she kept her gaze fixed on Kushina. You never even bothered to get to know him. You just stood by. Menma, now realizing he was caught red-handed, yelled defensively. Hey, why did you tell them that? Mito glared at him, her eyes sharp with anger. Shut up, brat. Be glad he didn't kill you like he did those demon brothers. Don't act like you didn't deserve it. Kushina, still silent, was visibly shaking. Mito's words cut through her, forcing her to confront the painful truth. Then Mito turned back to her mother, her voice heavy with emotion. No, Mom, she said. Tell me, what's his favorite food? When was the last time you cooked it for him? Or even asked him about it? Kushina faltered. She couldn't answer. Exactly, Mito replied, her voice full of sorrow. You don't know. You never even bothered to ask because, as Naruto said, you never saw him. You never loved him. Kushina looked like she had been struck by a heavy blow. The words stung more than she ever imagined they would. She had failed her son in the most painful way. Mito softened a little, looking at her mother with sad eyes. "There is something wrong with me too, Mom," she admitted quietly. "I didn't hate Naruto, but I turned a blind eye to his suffering. I didn't love him like I should have. I ignored him just as much as you did." Kushina's heart twisted in regret, but it was too much to take in at once. Kakashi, who had been silently watching, now spoke again, his tone filled with disappointment. "Kushina-san, you and Sensei always give speeches about family in public or gatherings and say how perfect it is, but in reality it's broken. I'm disappointed in you both." The words hung in the air, and the weight of everything that had been said seemed to suffocate the room. Everyone had their own regrets, their own guilt to carry, and for the first time, it felt like they all saw the cracks in the facade of their so-called perfect lives. A week later, Zabuza and Haku launched another attack. Kakashi was just about to deliver the final blow when, in an unexpected move, Naruto intervened. He swiftly saved Zabuza, pushing him out of harm's way, and allowed Haku to escape. The group was in shock, unsure of Naruto's intentions. As the tension began to settle, Gato appeared, accompanied by his thugs, demanding control over the situation. Without hesitation, Naruto stepped forward, his eyes cold with determination. He ruthlessly ended Gato's life in a brutal and unforgiving manner, showing no mercy. His actions were swift and decisive, sending a chilling message to anyone who dared cross him. The mission was officially completed. Tazuna, grateful for their assistance, named the newly completed bridge the Great Naruto Bridge, a testament to the strength and will that Naruto had displayed throughout the ordeal. As the group made their way back to the village, Kushina couldn't hold back anymore. Her heart weighed heavy with guilt, and she took a step toward Naruto. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "Naruto, I know I've failed you. I want to apologize. I never meant to hurt you, not really." Naruto didn't even glance in her direction. His gaze remained fixed ahead, the sharp edge of his silence louder than any words. "The damage is done," he said flatly, his tone colder than the wind blowing through the trees. "You can apologize all you want, but it won't change anything." Kushina's heart sank as she took a hesitant step closer, desperate to make him understand. "Please, Naruto, I'm so sorry. I never wanted you to feel neglected. I never wanted you to feel like you weren't loved." Naruto finally turned to face her, his eyes sharp with bitterness. "You're not sorry, Kushina. Not really." His words struck her like a slap. "What you're feeling is guilt. Not regret, not love. Guilt." He took a breath, his voice becoming colder. "If this had stayed in the shadows, if I hadn't exposed it all to the world, you would have let it slide, wouldn't you?" He paused, his eyes locking onto hers with unyielding intensity. "You'd keep pretending, going on like nothing ever happened. But now that the truth is out in the open, you're only feeling sorry because people know, not because you care." Kushina opened her mouth to respond, but the words wouldn't come. She wanted to apologize, to make things right, but the raw truth in Naruto's voice made her feel like everything she said would be meaningless. Naruto turned away from her, his back now to the whole group. "I don't need your apology," he muttered quietly, more to himself than anyone else. "The past is done, and I'm done with all of you." Without another word, he continued walking ahead, leaving Kushina standing there, feeling the weight of her failures settle deeper into her heart. They reported their actions to the Hokage. Minato's face tightened as he asked, "Why did you continue with such a dangerous mission? It wasn't your place to make that decision." Naruto stood with a cold demeanor, his voice unyielding. "It was my decision. I did what I wanted to do it, and I didn't compel your precious wife and two adorable kids to come with me. They came on their own," he said, his eyes unwavering. Minato's tone rose, his anger growing. "You defied the orders of your superiors. You disrespected me, the Hokage." Naruto's response was as sharp as ever. "I don't care if you're the Hokage or not. The truth is, you don't act like one. So don't think just because you sit in the Hokage seat, you've earned my respect." I am the Hokage, and I am your father. Minato roared, his voice filled with authority. Naruto scoffed, an icy smirk crossing his face. Oh really? He mocked, his voice dripping with disdain. Since when did you start seeing me as your son? He stepped forward, his eyes narrowing into a deadly glare. All my life, you hated me. You ignored me. You favored those two brats over me. Menma and Mito, your perfect little children. Minato's expression faltered, but Naruto wasn't done. His voice grew sharper, more cutting. You didn't care about me. You forged records to hide my achievements, beat me when I dared question your decisions. You let the village tear me down while you watched. You never, not once, treated me like a son. Minato's breath hitched, his heart sinking under the weight of Naruto's words. His vision blurred for a moment, the guilt and regret consuming him. But Naruto wasn't finished. You're pathetic, Naruto spat. Pathetic as a father and as Hokage. You chose those brats. And now you want me to believe you're some kind of hero, some kind of father figure. He stepped closer, his gaze piercing. You failed me, Minato, and you'll never fix it. Not now. Not ever. Minato flinched as if each word was a physical blow. His mind raced, searching for something to say, something to make it right. But nothing came. All he could do was stand there, feeling the distance between him and Naruto grow wider with each passing second. Naruto stood still for a moment, the weight of his decision heavy on his shoulders. His back was turned to the village, to the people who had wronged him, and to the family that had failed him. He took a deep breath, and his voice rang out, cold and resolute. I'm done with this village. Done with all of you. His words echoed through the air, cutting through the silence like a blade. I'm leaving. I don't need your pity, your apologies, or your false love. He paused, his eyes staring straight ahead, unwavering. From now on, I'm renouncing my family name. I am just Naruto. Just Naruto. No Uzumaki, no Namikaze. Mito, with her face filled with concern, took a step forward, trying to reach him. Naruto, please, don't, she began, her voice pleading. But Naruto didn't turn to face her. He didn't need to see the expression on her face. The hurt, the regret, the pity. It meant nothing to him now. He took another step forward, his body tense with the decision he had already made. No, Mito, he said, his voice low and firm. Don't bother trying to stop me. I've had enough. Mito reached out, but he sidestepped her without even looking. Naruto, please. She begged one last time, but Naruto was already moving. He walked past her, the pain in his chest now a familiar companion. But this time, it wasn't a weakness. It was his strength. Without another word, Naruto walked away from the village, from his past, from everything he had known. The distant sound of his footsteps was the only thing that remained in the wake of his departure. He was done, and for the first time in his life, he felt the freedom of truly being himself. Just Naruto. Naruto sat in stillness, his mind clear, his plan finally set into motion. He spoke to Sukuna, his inner presence, with calm determination. The plan begins now. Sukuna responded from within his mind, its tone steady. Yes, it's time. Naruto embarked on his journey, traveling for days through unfamiliar terrain, until he found the two figures he sought, Zabuza and Haku. They were sitting by a campfire, their faces grim and weary from the trials they had endured. Naruto approached without hesitation, his presence commanding attention. I'm not here to fight, Naruto began, his voice steady, yet carrying a weight of authority. I'm here to offer you something. Zabuza, ever the skeptic, narrowed his eyes. And what's that? Another promise of power or a foolish offer? Naruto remained calm, unaffected by the tone. I'm creating a village, place called Ryamen. It'll be a sanctuary for outcasts like us, those who have been betrayed, those who have been neglected, the orphans, the lost souls. My goal is to make Ryamen the strongest, a place of peace. Zabuza stared at him, still unsure. Why should we trust you? Why should we join you? Naruto's eyes hardened slightly, but his voice was unwavering. Because I saved you, Zabuza. Do you want to run for the rest of your life, always looking over your shoulder? Or do you want to stand tall, respected, and safe? Haku looked at Naruto, his expression conflicted but curious. And if we join you, what's the guarantee? How can we trust that you won't betray us like everyone else? Naruto's gaze softened, and he took a step closer. If you join me, I'll make sure you are safe, Haku. I'll make sure you're treated with respect, and that no one ever dares to put you down again. This is not about me. It's about creating something better for all of us. Zabuza rubbed his chin thoughtfully, clearly considering the offer. Even if we wanted to, we're still affiliated with the Mist. The village is in the middle of a civil war. We can't just abandon that easily. Naruto met his gaze, unflinching. If you join me, I will end the civil war. You won't need to run anymore. Zabuza was silent for a moment, the weight of the words sinking in. Even if we agree, there's still the matter of Mai Terumi. She's the rebel leader, and she might become the next Mizukage. She's not likely to let us go that easily. Naruto's expression remained calm, his resolve unshaken. Then I'll speak to her. I'll handle it. If you trust me, this will be the beginning of something new for all of us. Zabuza and Haku exchanged looks, their hesitation still present, but Naruto's words hung in the air like a promise. Slowly they nodded. We'll follow you, Zabuza said, his voice steady but reluctant. Naruto smiled, though it was more of a knowing smirk. Good. Then let's end this war and build a place where we don't have to run anymore. With that, the three of them set off toward the hidden mist, Naruto leading the way. The winds of change were already stirring, and the future of Ryomen was starting to take shape. A few days later, Naruto, Zabuza, and Haku arrived at the hidden mist village. As they approached the village gates, they were met by none other than Mai Terumi, the Mizukage herself, her expression a mixture of suspicion and authority. Naruto stepped forward, his eyes sharp and calculating. I've come to make a deal, he said, his voice steady. I'll end the civil war in an hour, but in exchange you have to let Zabuza go free. Mai narrowed her eyes at him. And why should I believe you? What's in this for me? How do I know you won't betray us like everyone else has? Naruto's gaze was unwavering, a sense of calm certainty radiating from him. I have my plans, he said simply, his confidence unsettling. You want to end the bloodshed. This is your chance. Mai didn't immediately respond, her mind working through the implications. You're asking a lot. You want me to just let Zabuza go? What guarantee do I have that you can actually end this war? She asked, her voice laced with doubt. Naruto's expression hardened slightly, impatience creeping into his tone. How many more shinobi need to die before you act? Hundreds are already losing their lives. Do you want to continue playing games while the village burns? Or do you want to save lives? His eyes locked with hers, daring her to hesitate further. You can either let me handle this, or watch more blood spill. The choice is yours. Mai clenched her fists, frustration mounting. She was a leader, but the weight of this decision weighed heavily on her shoulders. Finally, after a tense silence, she spoke, her voice tight. Fine, I'll allow it, but I'll come with you. I need to see this for myself. Naruto nodded once, an acknowledgement of her decision. Of course, let's move quickly. Without wasting another moment, they set out. The group traveled swiftly through the village's dense terrain, reaching the battlefield where Yagura, the former Mizukage, was entrenched with his forces. The mist forces, under his rule, had long been a thorn in the side of the village, and Yagura himself was said to be a powerful and ruthless leader. However, Naruto was undeterred. They arrived in stealth, slipping past the remaining shinobi with ease. Naruto, now fully in control of his strength, unleashed his cleave and dismantle techniques. The shinobi who tried to confront him were cut down with surgical precision, their bodies falling in pieces as if they had never existed. Finally, they reached Yagura. The former Mizukage, sitting confidently atop his throne, narrowed his eyes as he noticed their approach. Before he could say a word, Naruto moved like lightning. With one clean swing, his cleave sliced through Yagura's body, severing it into multiple pieces. Blood sprayed in all directions, and the former Mizukage was no more. Naruto stood over the fallen body, his breath even, his face impassive. "See, I kept my word." Mei, who had been silently watching, felt a chill run down her spine. She had known Yagura was a monster, but to witness his life snuffed out so effortlessly, so casually, it was both unsettling and awe-inspiring. "You," she began, her voice shaky, but she couldn't find the words. She had underestimated him. Naruto wiped the blood from his blade, his expression still unreadable. "The war is over. You're welcome." Zabuza, who had been silent throughout the whole ordeal, looked at Naruto with a sense of newfound respect. This wasn't just a man of words. He was a man of action, a force that even the strongest of leaders could not ignore. Mei exhaled sharply, her mind racing. "The war is over," she repeated softly, still processing the magnitude of what had just happened. I don't know what to say." "Then don't," Naruto said, his voice cold. With the first step toward building Ramen complete, Naruto, Zabuza, and Haku continued their journey. They took in orphans and betrayed genins, promising them a place free from betrayal. Naruto trained them while Zabuza taught Kenjutsu and water jutsu, and Naruto focused on wind techniques. In just a few months, trust grew between them. Naruto gave shelter to more orphans, training those who were willing. The bond between the group strengthened, and Ramen began to take shape, one step at a time. The students trained by Naruto and Zabuza improved rapidly, growing from beginners to mid-chunin level in just a few months. Naruto made sure they learned to work as a team, even though they were divided into two teams. With the Chunin exams approaching, Naruto taught them the body flicker technique, enhancing their speed and coordination. "Remember, even if you're in two teams, you're one team," Naruto told them, his voice firm yet encouraging. "Don't fight unnecessarily, and don't put yourselves at risk. If you fail, it's not the end. We'll try again. Look out for each other's backs." The teams were set. Kurin, Ren, and Jin made up one team under Haku's guidance. The second team, Meizu, Mai, and Misa, was led by Zabuza. Together, they set off for Konoha, each team prepared and eager for the upcoming Chunin exams. As they traveled, Naruto reminded them, "Show Konoha what you're capable of, but remember, it's not just about passing the exams. It's about proving to yourselves what you've learned and how far you've come. Make me proud. Make them regret ever turning their backs on you," Naruto told them, his voice calm but firm. "Don't seek revenge. Make them question why they betrayed you in the first place." With that, he stayed behind in Ramen, watching his students depart for the Chunin exams. Naruto stayed behind in Ramen, quietly watching over the children he'd taken in, each one a reminder of the world's cruelty and his promise to change it. With Gato's company now under his control, now named Ramen Industries, and its funds redirected, Naruto turned to the next step, building the village from the ground up. He called in one of Gato's former architects, now loyal to Ramen. When they met, Naruto laid out his vision plainly. "No statues, no walls to divide people. Training grounds, shelter, clean water, and open skies. This village isn't built for power. It's built for those the world threw away." The architect studied him for a moment, then nodded. "I'll begin the designs." Naruto simply said, "Make it a home." During the Chunin exams, both Team Haku and Team Zabuza stood out. On Naruto's orders, they avoided unnecessary violence. But when cornered, they didn't hesitate. A sound ninja fell during one of the matches, the only casualty. Whispers about the mysterious village called Ramen rippled through the ranks of genin and jonin alike. After the preliminaries, All 6 of Ryaman's genin advanced with ease. Their precision, teamwork, and discipline didn't go unnoticed. In the stands, Kakashi, Kushina, Sasuke, Sakura, Mito, Menma, and Mina approached Zabuza and Haku. "What are you doing here?" Kushina asked, eyeing them warily. "We're here for our genin teams," Zabuza replied flatly. Kakashi frowned. "Your headbands. They're not from the mist. What village are you representing?" "You noticed," Haku said calmly. "We're no longer affiliated with the Hidden Mist. We now serve Ryaman." "Ryaman," Mito repeated, scoffing. "That new village? It's barely a few months old. How can it produce genin this skilled?" Zabuza scoffed. "Hard work beats entitlement. Unlike those who think being the Hokage's children makes them invincible." Menma's eyes narrowed, growling under his breath. Then Zabuza looked around. "Speaking of blondes, where's the other one? The kid who saved us, the real deal, not this fake one," pointing at Menma. Kushina and Mito stiffened at the mention of Naruto. A shadow passed over their faces. "He left the village," Kushina admitted quietly.
Haku's brow furrowed.
"Why?" "We neglected him," Kushina said, her voice laced with guilt. "Ignored him for too long." Zabuza and Haku fell silent, offering no comfort, only judgment in their gaze. Minato's voice echoed through the arena. "The preliminary rounds are over. The final stage will take place in 1 month." With that, Team Haku and Team Zabuza quietly left Konoha, making their way back to Ryaman. Kurin looked confused. "Why are we leaving already?" Zabuza glanced at her. "We'll be back in a month." "But the other teams are staying in Konoha," Mai pointed out. "We know," Zabuza said sharply. "But that place isn't home. Not for us." "Is it because what Naruto-sama went in this village?" asked Ren. Zabuza and Haku remained silent. They thought is as yes, and they stayed silent over the journey. In Konoha, Minato sat in the strategy room, scanning the recent reports from the Chunin exams. His eyes lingered on one name, Ryaman. A newly formed village, producing genin this skilled in just a few months? He muttered, brows furrowed. How is that possible? Just then, the doors opened. Jiraiya strolled in, waving lazily. "Yo, Minato. Thought I'd drop in and check on my favorite students." Minato smiled faintly and stood to greet him. "It's good to see you, Jiraiya-sensei." After a few casual greetings, Minato's tone turned more serious. "Would you consider training Mito and Menma for the finals?" Jiraiya nodded. "Of course. But what about the other one? That boy, what was his name, Naruto? Last I heard, he was a prodigy even beyond Itachi. Where is he?" Minato lowered his head in silence. Just then, Kushina entered with Mito and Menma following behind. Jiraiya gave them his usual toothy grin. "There's my god kids." He looked around. "Hey, where's Naruto?" Kushina hesitated, her expression tightening. Before she could answer, Menma scoffed. "Tisich, don't bring up that traitor." Smack. Mito's hand came down hard on the back of Menma's head. "Don't you dare call him that," she snapped. "This whole mess, him leaving, us losing him. It started because you were too lazy to train and expected things to be handed to you, and Mom and Dad treated him like trash." Menma clenched his jaw, rubbing the back of his head, but said nothing. Jiraiya's smile faded. His eyes, usually playful, turned cold. "He left?" he asked softly. Kushina nodded. "And I don't think he's coming back." Jiraiya frowned. "I'm asking again. Where is Naruto?" Kushina looked away, shame etched across her face. "He left the village. He cut all ties with us." Jiraiya's expression hardened. "Left? Why?" Minato said nothing. It was Kushina who answered. "Because we treated him like he didn't matter." Jiraiya stared at her, disbelief creeping into his tone. And you didn't think to tell me? If I had known, I would have found him, helped him. When did this happen? A few months ago, Minato muttered. Jiraiya exhaled slowly, voice bitter. Minato, Kushina, how could you be so blind? You neglected Naruto, your own son, for the sake of the Jinchuriki. There was a pause, thick and uncomfortable. Then Mito spoke quietly. It wasn't just neglect. Everyone turned to her. From what I remember, Dad hated Naruto with vigor. He swapped Naruto's grades with Menma's in the academy to make Menma look more talented. Mito, Kushina gasped. But she continued. We were all a team, me, Menma and Naruto. But Mom never once called Naruto for training. Every time we went out to train, he was left behind. Silence settled like a heavy fog. Jiraiya clenched his fists. You didn't lose him because he was weak, he said coldly. You lost him because you made him believe he didn't belong. Jiraiya turned to Minato, voice low but sharp. What is this, Minato? How can you love one child and hate the other? Minato stayed silent, his head lowered. Jiraiya's gaze shifted to Kushina. And you, Kushina, you're in value family more than anything. How could you turn your back on your own son? Kushina's hands trembled, guilt burning behind her eyes. I don't know where I went wrong teaching you, Jiraiya continued, disappointment thick in his voice. But I never expected this from you. Then he turned to Menma. And you, blaming Naruto because you're too lazy to work hard? Menma snapped back, raising his voice. I didn't blame him. He used some secret scrolls to get strong. Silence fell across the room like a hammer. Then, smack, Mito struck Menma on the back of his head. Idiot, she hissed. How many times do I have to tell you? He read the same scrolls we read. She glared at him. He reads. He trains. He doesn't waste time bragging about being the Hokage's kid. He's naturally gifted, but he worked harder than all of us combined. Menma rubbed his head, but said nothing. Jiraiya's voice softened, but only slightly. And you all let him walk away thinking he didn't matter. Jiraiya crossed his arms, staring Menma down. Boy, if you keep acting like this, you're gonna get yourself killed. You've got two options. Either drop the dream of being a shinobi or leave that laziness behind and work. The room went quiet. No way, Menma shouted, eyes wide. I dreamed of becoming Hokage. Jiraiya didn't flinch. Then come outside. Show me what you've got. They headed to the training grounds. The test was short, brutal, one-sided. Menma collapsed to the ground, gasping for breath, soaked in sweat. You can't even last 5 minutes, Jiraiya said coldly. And you're breathing like you fought a war. If you go into battle like this, you'll die before your mission starts. At this level, you can't even call yourself a genin. In fact, you should still be in academy. Menma's face went pale. Why, you're lying. You're only saying this because you're mad Naruto left. Jiraiya shook his head slowly. No. Ask any other genin, hell, even your teammates. They'd say the same. Minato and Kushina stood in silence, their heads bowed. You two were too blinded by pride, Jiraiya said harshly. You neglected one son emotionally and destroyed the other through arrogance. Jiraiya turned to Menma, voice like steel. You've got 1 month. I'm gonna whip you into shape myself. If you fail the exams after that, you give up the dream of being a shinobi. Menma gulped, silent. Good, Jiraiya said, walking off. Training starts tomorrow at dawn. Don't be late. From that moment on, Jiraiya took full responsibility for Menma's training. No excuses, no shortcuts. At the same time, Kushina, shaken by everything, focused her energy on helping Mito grow stronger. In the shadow of their guilt, both parents finally stepped up, but whether it was too late, only time would tell. A month passed, and the day of the finals finally arrived. The atmosphere was charged with excitement as everyone eagerly awaited the matches. Naruto, now the leader of Ryumen Village, decided to attend. He sat in the VIP section, and whispers immediately began circulating. People had heard that he was the head of the newly formed village, and curiosity buzzed in the air. The first match of the day was between Menma and Kurin. Naruto, observing from the VIP area, turned to Makoto and asked, "Is that the Hokage's son?" Makoto nodded. "Yes, that's Menma." "I heard he's useless," Naruto remarked casually, a hint of derision in his tone. A few people nearby snickered, but Makoto, who was present, frowned at the comment. "Watch your mouth," Makoto warned, her voice stern. Naruto shrugged, unfazed. "What? I'm just saying what the Jonins in my village said. They encountered him before and said he's all bark, no bite." Before Makoto could respond, Kushina entered the VIP area and sat beside her. Upon hearing the conversation, Kushina's expression darkened. "Kushina, this boy is blabbering about Menma and bad-mouthing him," Makoto said, looking at Naruto with concern. "I'm not bad-mouthing anyone," Naruto replied coolly. "I'm just stating the truth." Kushina froze as she recognized the voice. "Naruto?" she called out, her tone a mix of surprise and longing. Naruto turned his gaze toward her, his face emotionless. "Hello, mother," he said, his voice cold, void of the affection it once held. Kushina felt a pang in her chest, the lack of warmth in his words hitting her harder than she expected. She struggled to mask her pain as she asked, "What are you doing here?" "We've been looking for you." Naruto, his eyes distant, replied nonchalantly, "I'm here to represent my village, Ryaman. As its leader, I'm obligated to attend." Makoto, still surprised by the revelation, asked, "You're the leader of Ryaman? But how could such a new village produce talented genin so quickly?" Naruto's gaze shifted to the ongoing match, but he answered without hesitation. "Unlike the genins of Konoha, my genins work hard. They don't brag about their skills or about being clan heirs, even though they have natural talent. I made sure of that. They work twice harder than ever." Kushina's heart sank as she absorbed his words, guilt creeping into her. "Naruto, why did you leave us?" she asked, her voice soft with regret. Makoto turned to Kushina in confusion. "Is he really your son?" Kushina nodded, the weight of years lost pressing on her shoulders. Naruto met Kushina's gaze, his expression as distant as ever. "Don't you know the reason?" he replied, his words cold, filled with unspoken pain. While the VIPs continued speaking, the match between Menma and Kurin began. Menma struggled from the start. Kurin, precise and efficient, showed no interest in dragging things out. With a swift chop to Menma's neck, he knocked him unconscious. Gasps echoed across the stadium. The crowd was stunned by how quickly it ended. "He's really strong," Makoto said, impressed. "Yes, his specialty is targeting pressure points," Naruto replied calmly. "He doesn't believe in wasting time." "Did you train him?" Kushina asked. Naruto nodded, along with Zabuza and Haku. The matches went on, building tension toward the final bout, Sasuke versus Gaara. Sasuke initially had the upper hand. His speed and precision pushed Gaara into a corner. But then, Gaara lost control. With a twisted scream, his body began to morph, forming a miniature version of Shikaku, the one-tailed beast. Suddenly, a massive explosion shook the stadium as the rooftop was blown apart. A wave of genjutsu spread over the audience, paralyzing many. The invasion had begun. Suna and the Sound Village forces poured in, led by Orochimaru. Naruto's expression darkened. Fury surged within him. Without hesitation, he jumped from the VIP area and gave chase after Gaara. Sasuke and several Konoha genin followed closely behind, but Naruto moved like a blur. He caught up to Gaara first. Kankuro and Temari rushed in to protect their brother, but Naruto didn't slow down. His eyes held no mercy. With a swift combination of cleave and dismantle, He cut down the siblings without hesitation. They fell, lifeless. To Naruto's surprise, Shikaku didn't emerge from Gaara's corpse. Of course, if the Jinchuriki dies, the tailed beast dies too. To be clear, he didn't understand what he did. Moments later, Sasuke and the other genin arrived, only to stop in shock at the sight. Gaara and his siblings dead, and Naruto standing silently among them. Mito saw him and rushed forward, tears in her eyes. "Ni-san." She reached out to hug him, but Naruto stopped her with a firm push. His voice was flat. "Don't." Mito froze, stunned. The Naruto they once knew was no longer the same. Chapter 2.
No.
The voice was cold, flat, lifeless. Everyone froze. Mito felt a chill run through her spine. The others, Sasuke, Shikamaru, Sakura, and Shino, stood stunned. None of them had seen Naruto in months, and now here he was. But not the Naruto they remembered. He looked completely different. His spiky blonde hair had grown longer, more wild. His body was leaner, stronger. He wore a black half-sleeved shirt, black pants, and boots. His Hittite no longer bore the symbol of the hidden leaf. It was something else entirely, something foreign. He wasn't the same. "Naruto, where have you been?" Mito's voice cracked, laced with worry. "Do you have any idea how much we missed you?" Naruto's eyes narrowed. "We?" he asked, voice emotionless. "Yes, me, Mom, Dad, Menma. We've all been worried." Naruto scoffed, his voice turning bitter. "Don't call them my mom and dad. They lost that right a long time ago. They're just the ones who gave birth to me." Mito flinched. "And you?" he continued, voice sharpening. "Since when did you start caring about me?" "I've always cared," she insisted, stepping forward. "Do you really expect me to believe that?" Naruto said, his tone rising with anger. "As far as I remember, I was treated like trash. Like I didn't matter." "No, Naruto, that's not true." "Then tell me," he cut her off. "What changed?" Mito stayed silent. "If it was because of the wave mission, or that day when I finally snapped, don't pretend that changed anything," Naruto said, his voice filled with quiet fury. "If I hadn't spoken up, nothing would be different. You would have kept ignoring me. So don't act like it never happened." Silence fell over the group like a thick fog. And then Naruto vanished, just like that. No one spoke, not at first. Sasuke stared at the empty space where Naruto had stood. He clenched his fists. He understood, at least a little. He had been there that day. He'd heard Naruto's pain, and now he felt a deep regret gnawing at him. Naruto had been the only one to see Sasuke for himself, not as Itachi's little brother, the only one who dared to challenge him, to stand beside him. Sasuke had never returned that. He should have. "What a drag," Shikamaru muttered, his voice low and serious. His eyes drifted to Gaara's lifeless body. He killed Gaara like it was nothing. The Chunin exam ground. High above the stadium, the battle raged. Minato, Jiraiya, and Hiruzen stood against a terrifying enemy, Orochimaru and the reanimated first and second Hokages. But the undead founders of Konoha, bound by the Edo Tensei, were invincible. No matter how much damage they took, they simply regenerated. Hiruzen's brow furrowed. He knew what had to be done. "Minato, Jiraiya, fall back. I have a plan," Hiruzen said grimly. "What is it, sensei?" Jiraiya asked. Hiruzen didn't answer. Instead, he began forming hand signs. Both Jiraiya and Minato recognized it immediately, the Death Reaper seal.
Sensei, no.
Jiraiya yelled in alarm. "Are you crazy? That jutsu will kill you." Hiruzen smiled faintly. "I've lived a long life, Jiraiya. I have few regrets, but two still haunt me. 1. Failing to end Orochimaru when I had the chance. And 2. Standing by and watching while Minato turned his back on Naruto. I should have helped that boy. Orochimaru let out a mocking laugh. Oh, Minato. Favoritism over talent? What a shame. I know how your precious firstborn is all talk, while Naruto, now he was a genius. But you couldn't see past your pride. Shut up, you snake, Minato shouted, his voice raw with guilt and rage. Kukuku. Did I hit a nerve, Minato? Orochimaru sneered, his serpentine eyes gleaming with malice. Deny it all you want, but deep down you know it's true. Minato clenched his fists, the guilt etched across his face like cracks in porcelain. Orochimaru's grin widened. I heard a rather fascinating tale. They say Naruto, your forgotten son, has built his own village, trained genin who've surpassed even Konoha's best, and all in a matter of months. No academy, no elite Jonin senseis, just him. He chuckled darkly. Imagine what he could have become. If I had met him first, he would have made a magnificent ally, strong, smart, unshackled by your village's hypocrisy. Minato's eyes burned with pain and fury. You bastard! He shouted, lightning crackling around his fists. Kukuku, you abandoned greatness, Minato, Orochimaru said, voice cold now. Oh, I'm flattered you think of me so highly, came a calm, cutting voice from behind them. Everyone turned. Naruto stood at the edge of the rooftop. Even the reanimated first and second Hokages paused, curious. Naruto walked forward slowly, his eyes locking onto the undead forms of the village's founders. You're creepy, Orochimaru, but summoning them? Naruto said, nodding toward the first and second. I didn't think you were that desperate. Orochimaru grinned. Think about it. The very founders of Konoha, destroying what they once built. Poetic, isn't it? No, Naruto said coldly. It's pathetic. Orochimaru's grin faltered. What did you say? I said, if I were you, I would have brought back Madara Uchiha. Naruto replied casually. At least he had a real grudge. He defected for a reason. You have a point, Orochimaru admitted thoughtfully. But you're wasting your time with Konoha, Naruto continued. What do you mean? Orochimaru asked, genuinely intrigued. Naruto's eyes darkened. The image you see of Konoha is just a mask. Shallow, fragile. A village that preaches will of fire but practices favoritism. A Hokage who turns a blind eye to injustice and calls it leadership. A place where people can't even tell the difference between a kunai and a sealing scroll. He paused. I was hated, beaten, feared. Everyone believed I was the Kyuubi reincarnated. But the truth is, I never had the Kyuubi sealed inside me. I was a scapegoat, a child to carry blame, to wear hatred, Naruto said bitterly. All while your golden child, Menma, bathed in your love. Even the first Hokage, Hashirama, seemed disturbed. This isn't the Konoha I built. Tobirama nodded gravely. Favoritism weakens a village from within. Naruto called Minato with guilt and concern, but Naruto didn't budge. Hey, old man. Naruto's voice cut through the tension like a blade. Calm, cold, controlled. What are you trying to do? Hiruzen didn't stop his hand signs. His expression was solemn. What I should have done years ago. I'm ending him. Naruto's gaze narrowed. You think you can? Be honest. He's like a snake. He'll slither away before you finish the jutsu. Orochimaru chuckled, slowly clapping. Well, Naruto, I didn't know you held me in such high regard. No, Naruto said flatly. You're just a bastard that needs to be put down. Orochimaru's smile twitched, his ego dented, though he masked it well. You heard me right, Naruto continued. I don't want you hindering me in the future, so I'm ending you now.
Brat, Orochimaru snarled.
You really think you can kill me? You're delusional. I'm not, Naruto replied simply. In one motion, he formed a single hand sign. Slash, slash, slash. The only sound that followed was the sharp slicing of wind. Orochimaru blinked, then staggered. A heartbeat later, his body collapsed, neatly cut into dozens of small cubes, sliced so finely they perfect held shape. Silence. Everyone stood frozen, stunned. The Edo Tensei broke. Hashirama and Tobiramas gained control over themselves. Outside the barrier, the ANBU stood in shock. Orochimaru's barrier team stared in disbelief, their jutsu faltering as their master lay in pieces. Wait, Naruto, Hiruzen asked, still reeling. How did you even get inside the barrier? Naruto glanced at him. Does it matter? The snake is dead. Be glad. He won't cause any more pain or torment anyone else. Hiruzen had no answer. Naruto. A voice stopped him. Minato. Naruto turned. Minato stepped forward, remorse and guilt etched deep across his face. Can you come back? Please. We can be a family again. I know I failed you. I'm so sorry. I promise I'll change. There was a heavy silence. Naruto shook his head.
No.
I have things to do. People who need me. I won't turn my back on them. Please, Naruto, Minato pleaded. I know you don't owe us anything, but at least come for your mother. She's not herself since you left. Naruto was quiet for a long moment. Then slowly he spoke. I'll ask you one question, he said. Answer it honestly. Lie to me, and you'll have a grave next to Orochimaru. Minato nodded shakily. Why did you treat me like that? Naruto asked, voice laced with pain. Why did you hate me? Why did you swap my grades with that fool? Why didn't you once ask how I was doing? Minato's lips parted, but no words came. He stood silent, ashamed, unable to look his son in the eye. Naruto closed his eyes, as if the silence was answer enough. You don't have one, he said quietly. So don't bother me again. He raised his hand, sending chakra into the seal etched into his palm, a signal to his team. Without another word, Naruto turned and walked away. And with that, he was gone, leaving behind dust, silence, and the weight of everything left unsaid. The smoke from the battle still lingered in the air, but the invasion had stopped. News spread like wildfire through the village. Orochimaru was dead. The unthinkable had happened. From the rooftop, Naruto stood tall, his cloak fluttering in the wind, a quiet intensity burning in his eyes. He had just returned from delivering a fatal blow to one of the legendary Sannin. Shock swept across the hidden leaf. No one had expected it, not like this. Suddenly, Kabuto Yakushi appeared, his face twisted with rage as he confronted Naruto. You killed Orochimaru-sama? He demanded, his voice trembling with fury. Naruto's gaze was cold, calculating. Yes, he replied without hesitation. He was a hindrance to my plans. Now you have a choice. Join me, or die. Kabuto's eyes narrowed. Why would I ever join you? He spat. Orochimaru is dead, Naruto said flatly. What will you do now? You won't survive in this village. Everyone knows your betrayal. You're a walking corpse unless you switch sides. Kabuto stood defiant. My loyalty lies with Orochimaru-sama, even in death. Elsewhere, the rookie genin, Shikamaru, Mito, Menma, and others arrived at the Chunin exam arena, carrying the lifeless bodies of Gaara, Temari, and Kankuro. Their eyes were heavy with sorrow. Baki, the Sand sibling sensei, sat tied up along with several captured Sand shinobi. The rest of the invading Sound and Sand forces lay dead. Kakashi, upon seeing the fallen Kazakage children, approached with dread in his eyes. You killed them? He asked.
No, mito replied solemnly.
Naruto did. Kakashi's breath caught. Naruto is here? Yes, said Shikamaru. He killed the three, without even breaking a sweat. Before Kakashi could respond, a jounin dropped from the rooftop. Orochimaru is dead, he said breathlessly. Killed by Naruto. The news struck like lightning. What? Gasped Menma. Orochimaru is a Sannin. How? Without delay, Kakashi and the genin rushed to the rooftop to confirm it for themselves. Atop the tower stood Minato, flanked by Jiraiya and Hiruzen. Their faces were grim, each filled with a mix of shock, sorrow, and contemplation. Dad, Mito and Menma called out. Minato turned to them slowly, his eyes shadowed with sadness. Kakashi stepped forward. Did Naruto really kill Orochimaru? Yes, Hiruzen said quietly. Asterisk, he used a technique I've never seen before. It was as if nothing had happened. But then, moments later, Orochimaru collapsed, cut into pieces. They all looked toward the rooftop, where some flesh and remnants still remained. Wait, is that Orochimaru? Sasuke asked, his voice low. Hiruzen gave a silent nod. The truth was undeniable. Naruto had changed, and the world had no idea what was coming next. Naruto stood still, his gaze locked on Kabuto, whose rage was boiling over. You really don't want to live, do you? Naruto asked calmly, almost disappointed. You think you can kill my master and walk away unharmed? Kabuto roared, chakra surging violently around him. His eyes burned with fury. Naruto didn't flinch. I killed your master before he even realized he was dying. What makes you think you can do better? Kabuto didn't wait. He charged forward, chakra scalpels ignited in both hands, aiming for Naruto's vitals. But in the blink of an eye, he stopped mid-stride, frozen. Then, without a sound, Kabuto collapsed, dead. As the wind carried away the last traces of battle, Zabuza, Haku, and Naruto's genin team approached from the shadows. It's done, Naruto said, turning to them. We're leaving. But what about the exams? And promotions? Haku asked softly. Naruto sighed. Forget them. You can take the exams again in 6 months. If not for the invasion, you all would have made Chunin. But that snake bastard ruined everything. Without another word, they turned their backs on Konoha and vanished into the distance. Few days later, Konoha. Reconstruction was underway. With Orochimaru's swift death, the village had avoided the worst-case scenario. Fewer deaths, fewer injuries, and the damage was being handled quickly. The rookie genin, after spending the day helping with recovery efforts, gathered at a kimchi restaurant, the familiar comfort of food and friends providing a brief moment of peace. Ino looked stunned, her eyes wide with disbelief. Wait, you're serious? Naruto really killed the Sand siblings? And Orochimaru? Shikamaru leaned back with a tired sigh. Troublesome. I've already said it twice. Are you deaf or just annoying today? But how? Kiba asked, confused. I mean, maybe I believe he beat the Sand siblings, but Orochimaru? He's a Sannin, one of the strongest shinobi alive. Don't ask me, Choji said between mouthfuls. We saw what was left on the roof. Kiba leaned in. What do you mean, what was left? His corpse, Shikamaru said flatly. The third Hokage said Naruto used a jutsu none of them had ever seen. One moment, Orochimaru was fine. The next, he just fell apart, dead. Silence fell over the table. The weight of what had happened was only now starting to settle in. Naruto had changed, and no one knew what that meant for the future. In Council Room Konoha, the Hokage's office was heavy with silence, broken only by the rustle of papers and the occasional distant shout from shinobi working on reconstruction efforts outside. Konoha had just survived an invasion, but the dust hadn't settled. Not politically, not emotionally. Danzo Shimura stood at the center of the room, his expression unreadable, but his tone sharp as a kunai. So you're telling me, your son, the boy who left the village, killed Orochimaru and the Kazekage's children? Minato Namikaze, the yellow flash, didn't flinch. His eyes held a quiet fire as he replied, "Yes, we were there when he killed Orochimaru." Koharu Udatane leaned forward, concern etched into every wrinkle on her face. "Do you realize the political consequences this might cause?" Minato raised a brow. "What consequences?" "He killed the children of a Kage," she snapped. "Do you think Suna will just let that go?" The fourth Hokage let out a slow breath, measuring his words. "Have you all forgotten what war means? Casualties are inevitable. And let me remind you, Orochimaru tricked them. He murdered the Kazekage months ago and manipulated Suna into this invasion. Their forces are crippled. Their leadership is gone. They won't risk another war now. I just hope their council isn't foolish enough to act blindly." Shikaku Nara, leaning against the wall with his usual slouch, spoke up in a low, thoughtful voice. "What a drag. Honestly, if it weren't for Naruto, the casualties on our side would have been far worse. That jutsu he used to kill Orochimaru, no one's ever seen anything like it." Danzo's eyes narrowed. "That's exactly why we need to bring him back. He's a Konoha shinobi. We cannot allow someone of his power to remain rogue. What if he allies with another nation, turns that power against us? And that technique, we must study it, understand it. He was a mere genin, and yet he's producing students who fight like Chunin in a matter of months. Do you understand how far behind we've fallen?" Hamura Mitokado nodded gravely. "Yes, there are reports. He's built a village, called it Ryaman. He's hired Momochi Zabuza, and it said he killed Yagura the Mizukage, helped Mei Terumi end the civil war in the water country." The weight of those words sank into the room like a stone. Danzo stepped closer to the table, voice more insistent now. "You see, this is exactly what I've been saying. We must bring him back." But Hiruzen Sarutobi, the third Hokage, finally spoke, his voice calm but tired, aged not just by years but by the weight of too many battles. "That won't be possible. He made it clear. He wants nothing more to do with this village. And frankly, we should be grateful he didn't side with Orochimaru during the invasion. That jutsu he used, if he had turned it on Konoha, the village wouldn't be standing. And he wasn't even tired. He looked like he could keep going all day." He paused, letting that reality settle. "Our priority now is rebuilding. We must show the other nations that Konoha is still strong, still stable, even after this. Our security must be tightened. Our front must be united. That boy, he's out there, yes. But for now, he is not our enemy." Danzo's voice dropped to a whisper, sharp as steel. "So you're saying we just let that boy go, on his own?" Hiruzen closed his eyes for a moment, then gave a solemn nod. "For now, yes." Danzo's gaze hardened as he leaned forward, voice sharp with accusation. "Did you forget? He's a rogue shinobi now. We should officially label him as Missing Nin." Hiruzen shook his head slowly, his voice measured but firm. "No. He officially left Konoha months ago. It seems he planned it well." Jiraiya stepped forward, holding a set of documents. "These are his papers," he said, spreading them out before the council. "Proof that he resigned from the village formally."
Danzo scoffed, frustration evident.
"Somebody's foolishness cost us a potential shinobi. I've heard whispers this boy isn't just a prodigy. He's a prodigy of prodigies. He's even surpassing Itachi Uchiha." Minato's anger flickered in his eyes, but he kept his voice steady, choosing silence over confrontation. Inoichi Yamanaka finally broke the tense quiet, cautious but seeking clarity. "So, we just leave him by himself?" Minato's voice carried the weight of reluctant acceptance. "Yes, we don't have any other choice. If anyone has suggestions, speak now, but they can't bring us more problems." The room fell into a heavy silence. Village hidden in sand council room. The council chamber of Sunagakure was suffocating with tension. The desert winds outside howled like a lament for the fallen. No one spoke at first. The silence itself was a memorial, a grim acknowledgement of their loss. But grief soon gave way to anger and then to fear. We were deceived, a council member muttered bitterly, fists clenched on the table. That bastard Orochimaru killed the Kazekage. Tamari, Kankuro, even Gaara, they're all dead. The One Tail is gone. We've lost not only our leaders but our legacy. We're now the weakest of the 5 great nations. The words fell like sand through open fingers. Unavoidable, undeniable. Abi, one of the elder advisors, closed his eyes and exhaled slowly. We fell into his trap, and now we must face the consequences. Another voice rose, sharp and full of fury. We shouldn't let this slide. A cold glare cut through the air. I recommend you shut your mouth, Chio said curtly. Her tone brooked no argument. Even at her age, her presence was sharper than any blade. Abi nodded grimly. For now, Baki will serve as the acting Kazekage. Baki, standing tall despite the weight of recent events, accepted the responsibility with a solemn nod. Our forces are weakened. With the Kazekage's death now known across the nations, we may face an invasion. We must regroup, rebuild. We should consider an alliance with the Hidden Leaf, Abi added carefully. Have you lost your mind? Another council member snapped. The Leaf is the reason we lost everything. Don't forget. If not for them, the Kazekage would still live. No, Baki interjected, his voice steady. It wasn't Konoha. The attack came from someone else. Silence fell again. It was the leader of a newly formed village, Baki continued. A boy Naruto, the son of the 4th Hokage. He renounced his family name only a few months ago. He's the one who trained a group of genin into Chunin-level fighters in weeks. I can't even imagine what kind of training regimen he put them through. He paused, letting the shock settle in. And he didn't come alone. Zabuza Momochi fights beside him. The room went still. Whispers of a new power rising in the shadows of the great nations had been dismissed as rumors, until now. Now, Sunagakure faced not only the loss of its Kazekage, but the rise of a force that defied reason. The legacy of the sand lay in ruins. Hidden leaf root chambers. Beneath the peaceful surface of Konoha, hidden in the cold and lifeless corridors of the Root ANBU base, shadows stirred. Danzo Shimura stood still in the dim light, one arm resting behind his back, the other wrapped in thick bandages. Secrets sealed beneath flesh. His single eye was closed, but his mind raced. So, he killed Orochimaru. Just like that. Naruto Namikaze. No, the boy who cast aside even his name. Soon you will be under my control. He opened his eye. A Root ANBU operative knelt a few feet away, sensing the storm behind Danzo's calm. Danzo-sama, the masked operative spoke, voice measured and cold. How are you planning to bring him in? From the latest intelligence, he has his own village now. He's not a boy we can simply call back. Danzo's lips barely moved, but the words were ice. We will destroy it. A moment of stunned silence. That will surely break him, the Root agent said hesitantly. But what if he retaliates? According to the reports, he himself is a one-man army. Some say he surpassed even the 4th Hokage. Danzo turned slowly, his single eye narrowing. Which is why we must plan this carefully. Every weakness must be identified. Every threat neutralized before it breathes. He stepped forward, his cane tapping softly against the metal floor. He may be powerful, but he is still young, driven by emotion, idealistic. That is where we will strike. The operative remained silent, but unease radiated from his posture. He had read the reports, Naruto had taken down Orochimaru. He was training others at an unnatural pace. And now, Zabuza Momochi stood beside him, loyal. Danzo's voice dropped to a whisper. Break the village. Sever his ties. Turn him against the world. Then, offer him salvation. A thin smile curled beneath the elder's wrinkled face. Konoha will be the only thing left for him to cling to. And thus, the seed of betrayal was sown. Deep beneath the village of the Leaf, a new war was beginning. One not fought with kunai or chakra, but with the shadows of ambition and the chains of control. With Jiraiya, Tenzakugai, a lively, chaotic town nestled far from the structured calm of Konoha. It was a haven for gamblers, drunkards, and those who had no desire to be found. For Jiraiya of the Sannin, it had taken days of tracking, masking his chakra signature so finely that even someone as sharp as Tsunade wouldn't notice. He couldn't let her slip away this time. Now, under the soft glow of evening lanterns, he moved through the crowded streets, scanning gambling houses, bars, and any place with the scent of sake and desperation. And finally, he found her. There she was, Tsunade Senju, the Slug Princess, legendary healer, and infamously terrible gambler. Sitting at a low table with a bottle of sake in hand, Shizune sitting at her side. "Hello, Tsunade. Long time no see," Jiraiya said with a roguish grin, stepping into the light. Tsunade's expression barely shifted. "Jiraiya, what are you doing here? And how did you even find me? What, is it wrong for an old teammate to drop in?" Jiraiya asked, feigning innocence. Tsunade narrowed her eyes. "Cut the crap. Why are you here?" Jiraiya's tone turned serious. "Orochimaru invaded Konoha a few days ago." She paused, lifting her cup slowly. "Yeah, I heard. So what?" "He used a forbidden jutsu created by the Nidaime, reanimated the Shodai and Nidaime Hokage, controlled them, turned them against the village." Tsunade's grip on the cup tightened. Her face darkened. "What happened to them?" "Orochimaru's dead." The moment he said it, Tsunade choked on her sake, spraying it across the table. Even Shizune looked like she'd been slapped across the face. "What? Who? Was it Minato?" Tsunade asked, still coughing. Jiraiya shook his head slowly. "No, it was Naruto." The name hung in the air like a thunderclap. Tsunade blinked. "Are you joking? You expect me to believe that?" "It's true." Sensei Hiruzen was about to use the dead demon consuming seal. But before he could finish, Naruto appeared. Jiraiya paused, remembering the surreal moment. He didn't even move. He used a technique none of us had ever seen before. In the blink of an eye, Orochimaru was sliced to pieces. It wasn't even a fight. Tsunade stared at him, disbelief slowly being crushed by realization. "What kind of technique does that?" "I don't know," Jiraiya admitted. "But there's more. A few months ago, he officially renounced the Uzumaki and Namikaze names. Then he disappeared." Shizune frowned. "Where did he go?" "He formed a new village, named it Ryaman." There was a loud crack as Tsunade dropped her sake bottle. "A kid Naruto made his own village?" she said, voice rising. "Why would he leave Konoha? His family? Everything?" "I don't have all the answers," Jiraiya said, his usual cheer completely gone. "But I do know this, he sent genin from Ryaman to the Chunin exams. They were easily Chunin level. And none of them are even 14 yet." Tsunade sat back, stunned. The world was shifting and fast. Jiraiya looked her in the eyes. Tsunade sat in stunned silence, sake dripping from her fingers, forgotten. The din of Tenzakugai's lively nightlife continued beyond the small tavern. But in the quiet booth where two of the legendary Sannin sat, the air felt thick, heavy with something darker than grief. Jiraiya leaned back against the wall, one arm slung over the back of the bench, voice quiet. "And if you're wondering why he left the village and his family, You can blame Minato. Tsunade blinked, slowly turning toward him. What? Jiraiya nodded. From what I've heard, his sister Mito told me Minato treated Naruto like he was unwanted, neglected him, even resented him at times. He gave all his attention to the Jinchuriki siblings instead. The girl, Mito, she has potential, Jiraiya said. She's a capable shinobi, works hard, doesn't complain. But the other one, Menma, he's a waste of talent. No discipline, no drive. Couldn't pass the academy on merit if his life depended on it. His taijutsu's weak, chakra control's worse. I trained him personally for a month just to see if he had anything. Barely improved. He looked Tsunade in the eye, and for a moment, the usual grin was nowhere to be seen. But Naruto? That boy's a monster of a prodigy. The kind we haven't seen in generations. Minato, he messed up. Big time. Tsunade sighed, rubbing her temples. But what about Kushina? She's his mother. She should have cared at least. Jiraiya's voice dropped lower. She didn't hate him, but she didn't care either. Not really. She was too wrapped up in the other two, especially Menma. Tsunade clenched her fists, anger boiling beneath her skin. What the hell is happening in Konoha? What's the point of being a parent or a Hokage if you let your own son be treated like that? And that's not even the worst part, Jiraiya continued. For years, most of the village treated Naruto like he was the Nine-Tails, like he was the demon itself, not its jailer. Fear, hatred, whispered insults, stares that could kill. A sharp crack echoed as Tsunade's hand shattered the ceramic sake cup in her grip. What? How can Minato and Kushina be so blind? Easy, Tsunade, Jiraiya said, glancing around. A few patrons were already looking their way. You're drawing attention. Tsunade let out a shaky breath and sat back. So, why are you telling me all this now? I'm planning to meet him, Jiraiya said quietly. Tsunade stared at him. To what? Convince him to come back? Did the council send you? No, Jiraiya said firmly. I'm going on my own. I need to know if he's a threat or not. No one knows what he's really doing out there. He's quiet. Too quiet. And if he really has the power to kill Orochimaru without lifting a finger, then he's not just a missing Nin. He met her gaze, and for the first time in years, she saw genuine concern in his eyes. If he's building something dangerous, if he's another Orochimaru or worse, another Akatsuki, then we can't ignore it. If we do, it might be the end of the world. Tsunade frowned, uneasy. And if he is a threat? What then? You said it yourself, he's probably the strongest shinobi alive right now. What are you going to do about it? Jiraiya didn't answer right away. We'll worry about that later. Tsunade caught the word instantly. We? You're including me in this? What makes you think I'll go along with it? Jiraiya grinned faintly. Don't you want to see your godson again? See the village he's building with his own hands? Tsunade didn't respond. But she didn't say no either. So, will you tag along? Jiraiya asked, his tone unusually serious. Tsunade didn't answer immediately. Her eyes drifted toward the empty sake cup in front of her. Mind tangled in thoughts of a boy she barely knew but was tied to by blood, fate, and old promises. After a long pause, she sighed. Fine, I'll come. But do you even know where he is? You said it's a newly formed village. Yeah, Jiraiya said, nodding. I dug up some intel. It's positioned just beyond the land of waves, straddling the borders of the water and fire countries. Smart location, isolated, but close to trade routes. Tsunade stood, already rolling her shoulders. Then we move at dawn. It's already late. The next morning, their journey began. It took them a full week to reach the outer perimeter of the village known as Ryaman. Along the way, they passed through dense forests, misty coastlines, and unfamiliar settlements, places not yet marked on shinobi maps. And when they arrived, the village wasn't what they expected. Simple structures, active construction sites, bustling civilians and young shinobi sparring in open courtyards. A place not of grandeur, but of purpose. They stood before a modest gate where two guards, dressed in lightweight gray and black uniforms with minimalist red insignias, stepped forward. "State your business," one of the guards said plainly. Jiraiya raised an eyebrow. "What? Don't you know who we are? We're the legendary Sannin." The guard didn't blink. "You may be legendary, but in Ryaman, no one is above another. Everyone is treated equally, without title or reputation. So again, state your business. Or leave." Tsunade blinked. This place already feels different. Jiraiya sighed, raising both hands lazily. All right, we're here to meet Naruto." "For what reason?" "I'm his godfather. She's his godmother." The guard paused for a moment, then nodded. "Wait here." A brief silence followed, broken only by the sound of hammers and footsteps echoing through the construction sites nearby. Minutes later, a young boy, no older than 11, approached them, his expression calm but respectful. "Come with me. Naruto-sama has granted permission to meet." Jiraiya scratched his head. "Wait a minute. Didn't the gate guard say everyone here's equal? What's with this, Sama?" The boy nodded firmly. "Yes, that's true. But our respect for Naruto-sama comes from what he's done for us, not a title." Tsunade tilted her head. "What did he do for you exactly?" "I was an orphan," the boy said quietly, walking ahead of them. "My family was killed during a raid years ago. I survived, but I was living on scraps, alone. A few months ago, Naruto-sama found me. He gave me food, a home, and, most importantly, purpose. He trained me himself. He does that for all of us." Neither Jiraiya nor Tsunade responded right away. As they walked, they took in the sights. Villagers working shoulder to shoulder, both shinobi and civilians building homes, planting crops, and helping one another without hierarchy. There were no clan banners, no jonin strutting about, just focused cooperation. Eventually, the boy led them to a simple two-story building. "Guden exterior. No guards. No grandeur." "This is it?" Tsunade asked, eyes narrowing. "Yes," the boy replied. "This is where Naruto-sama stays. There's nothing fancy. He says if we're all equal, he should live no differently than us." Jiraiya let out a low whistle. That kid really is something else. Tsunade remained quiet. Her heart beat faster as they approached the door. She could feel it, his chakra. Calm, vast, and strangely gentle, and yet like a volcano. A village of equality, purpose, and strange discipline. A boy no one protected, who now protected others. A godson she had never met, about to open the door. As the door creaked open, the visitors were met with an unusual sight. 5 identical copies of Naruto, each busy with their own tasks. 2 clones were deep in discussion with a man who looked every bit the architect, surrounded by blueprints and scrolls. Another Naruto was sorting through financial documents, managing funds with an intensity that betrayed his focus. A 4th was reviewing old scrolls and organizing them by content, training, sealing, combat theory. And in the center of the room, the original Naruto sat calmly in a chair, arms folded, watching them with steady eyes. Without standing, Naruto spoke first, his tone cool and guarded. "So, what are you doing here? Or did your precious Hokage send you?" Jiraiya shook his head, a faint smile trying to ease the tension. No. I came of my own accord. I wanted to meet you." Naruto didn't blink. "So, what do you want to know?" Tsunade stepped forward, her eyes narrowing. "What made you decide to build a village of your own?" A faint, bitter smile crossed Naruto's face. "Konoha," he said. "That's what made me think of it." Tsunade looked confused. "What does that mean?" "If you'd ever truly lived in the village, not from the Hokage's seat but with its people, you'd understand," Naruto replied. "To put it simply, it's rotten from the inside. Favoritism is everywhere. They preach teamwork and loyalty, say we should never abandon a mission or our comrades. But when the time comes, they do the opposite. His voice hardened. The council is the worst. Corrupt, power-hungry. They talk about what's best for the village, but all they want is control to wage war, to use shinobi like tools. Tsunade's frown deepened. What are you talking about, Naruto? Who exactly are you blaming? Jiraiya's voice was quieter, more careful. Is it Danzo? But what does he have to do with any of this? Naruto nodded slowly. Yes, it's Danzo. Think about it. How did Orochimaru infiltrate Konoha during the Chunin exams? The village is surrounded by barrier seals. It wasn't just an oversight, it was treachery. Jiraiya's eyes sharpened. You're saying Danzo helped Orochimaru? He sided with him, Naruto said, his voice a mixture of disgust and certainty. He wanted the Hokage dead. With Hokage gone, Danzo believed he could seize power and become Hokage. Tsunade crossed her arms, her tone turning firm. That's a serious accusation. Do you have any proof? Naruto didn't respond with words. He reached into his cloak and pulled out a scroll, setting it on the table. As he unsealed it, its contents glowed faintly. He passed it to them without fanfare. As Tsunade and Jiraiya read through the documents, their faces grew more grim with each line. It was undeniable, Danzo had coordinated with Orochimaru. The details were chilling. Troop movements withheld, route orders left unexecuted, meeting logs buried in coded archives. Jiraiya finally spoke, voice strained. Where did you get this? Orochimaru's hidden base, Naruto replied. After I killed him, we raided every lab he had. Most of them were filled with inhuman experiments. But we also found this. He'd been planning this invasion for years. Danzo didn't just know, he helped. That's why Root didn't show up when the village was under attack. Jiraiya tried to protest, but Root was disbanded. Hiruzen gave that order himself. Naruto gave him a look that cut through the old man's defenses. You really believe Danzo would follow that order? A long silence followed before Jiraiya sighed. All right, it seems he didn't. There's more, Naruto continued. Orochimaru's research was focused on two things: awakening the Rinnegan and using Hashirama's cells. He experimented on dozens, maybe hundreds of test subjects. Only 2 were successful, Tenzo and Danzo. Both gained access to wood release. Tsunade looked stunned. Danzo had wood release? Naruto nodded. He did. Orochimaru tried to harness it for himself but failed. He also pursued immortality, obsessively, but that dream's a waste. Jiraiya raised an eyebrow. Why do you say that? What good is immortality if you're alone? Naruto asked, his voice quieter now. Even someone like Orochimaru, he wasn't immune to loneliness. He leaned forward slightly, the tension in his frame barely contained. And then there's the cursed seal. He created a new version, stronger, more invasive. He planned to use it on Sasuke, take over his body. But Sasuke was more talented than he expected. He barely avoided being consumed by it. Tsunade asked the final question, her voice grave. And what did you do with all of this? I brought the jutsu here. We'll study and train with what's useful. Everything else. His research, his methods, the cursed seal. I burned it all to ash. Naruto's expression hardened, his voice low and controlled. But the rage underneath was unmistakable. And since we're being honest, he began, let me tell you what really made me leave the village and build my own. He glanced at them one by one, Jiraiya, Tsunade, Shizune, and when he continued, his tone was ice-cold. You can blame it on my so-called family. To them, only Mito and Menma mattered. Why? Because they're Jinchuriki. Because they're special. He spat the word like poison. That fool of a father, Minato, hated me with vigor. And Menma? That brat always accused me of using some secret scrolls to train, like I was cheating just for trying to get stronger. And what did Minato do? He believed it. Every single time. Naruto leaned forward slightly, his voice thick with bitterness. Every time Menma cried or threw a tantrum, Minato would hit me, no questions asked. And the worst thing? He swapped my grades. Jiraiya's brow furrowed, uncertain. Swapped your grades. Naruto nodded slowly, the fury in his eyes contained but not dulled. I didn't get it at first. I trained harder than anyone, studied, pushed myself. But somehow I kept barely passing. Later I found out Minato switched my scores with Menma's, so that golden boy could shine and I'd be the failure. After that I stopped trying. I wrote my exams just well enough to scrape through. But Minato still beat me for getting low marks, while Menma, who failed everything, was coddled like a baby. Jiraiya remained quiet, clearly shaken. Tsunade opened her mouth, then closed it again. Finally, Jiraiya asked, "What about Mito and Kushina?" Naruto laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. "They're just shadows, wrapped up in their perfect little world with Menma. Neither of them ever asked how I was doing. And here's something you probably don't know. We were on the same Genin team." This startled all three. My Jonin sensei was Kushina, my own mother. But during training, she'd call Menma and Mito, take them somewhere to train privately, and leave me standing there like an outsider. Tsunade frowned. "Did you show up late to team meetings?" Naruto stared at her, incredulous. "Seriously? No, we all arrived on time. She just chose to take them. Never told me what to do. Never even looked at me." He leaned back, a sigh slipping from his lips. "But I didn't bother asking. I was used to it. I trained on my own just like I always had before the academy, during it, and after. On one mission, she even abandoned the objective because her children weren't ready. That disgusted me." I snapped. I told her exactly what I thought, about how I was treated. "And then," Tsunade asked, her voice quieter. "She begged for forgiveness, said she wanted to make things right. But I didn't believe her," Naruto said flatly. Jiraiya frowned. "Why? If she was feeling guilt and trying to fix things." Naruto cut him off. "Let's say I hadn't snapped that day. Nothing would have changed. She'd still ignore me. Menma would still steal credit for what I did. Minato would still play dirty, like he always does." His voice grew darker. "He would robbed my promotion, gave it to Menma, said I lacked strategic thinking, even though I completed the mission perfectly. Menma nearly screwed it up, but guess who got the praise?" Naruto shook his head. "I snapped in front of Kakashi, Sakura, Sasuke, and the mission clients. I did it there for a reason, because if I had said anything behind closed doors, they would have denied everything. Pretended like nothing happened. Protected the image. The lie." He looked up, eyes sharp and unwavering. "So tell me, why should I endure that? Why should I let them hold me back? Why should I let people who hate me decide my future?" Silence followed, heavy, suffocating. Jiraiya, Tsunade, and Shizen had no words. Because deep down they knew there was no justification.
No excuse.
And Naruto's pain, long ignored, was finally laid bare. Jiraiya broke the silence first, rubbing the back of his neck with a tired hand. "What he said about Menma. It's true," he admitted reluctantly. "I never wanted to believe it, but now I'm not sure how he even passed the academy. His chakra control is a disaster, and he can't last 5 minutes in a proper fight without panting like he's run a mile." He glanced at Naruto, then back at the others. "I trained him for a month before the Chunin exams. He improved, slightly, but nothing close to what he needed. I thought he just needed more time. But now, I get it. Minato played dirty." He let out a deep sigh, the weight of it heavy. "I don't know what went wrong. Minato wasn't like this. Back when we were young, when he was a Jonin, he was fair, kind. He didn't play favorites, not even during missions. Maybe maybe the power got to him. Naruto didn't hesitate. His reply was calm but cut like a blade.
No.
The power didn't change him. It just brought out his true self. Tsunade, who had remained quiet for a while, narrowed her eyes and shifted the topic, perhaps trying to ground herself in something more practical. Then tell me this. How did you get the money for all this? The land? The infrastructure? Your people? Naruto smirked faintly. I own my own company. It operates across all the elemental nations. That surprised even Jiraiya. You own a company? Naruto nodded. Yes, Ryaman Industries. Maybe you've heard of it. Tsunade frowned. How did you build something that fast? In such a short time? Instead of answering directly, Naruto asked a question of his own. You remember Gato? Jiraiya's face darkened. Yeah, Gato was one of the wealthiest businessmen in the elemental nations. He had his hands in everything: shipping, smuggling, black markets, drugs, weapons, even human trafficking. A complete scumbag. Naruto's eyes hardened. He also controlled Wave Country, monopolized it through fear and bribery. We were sent on a mission there. Kakashi and Kushina didn't care about what Gato was doing behind the scenes. As long as the mission was complete, they turned a blind eye. He leaned forward. But I didn't. After we completed the mission, I went back. I hunted Gato down myself. I killed him, dismantled his network, seized everything he owned, and I rebuilt it under a new name. Ryaman Industries. Jiraiya blinked, stunned. You took over Gato's entire empire? I purified it, Naruto corrected. Turned it into a legitimate enterprise. I kept the shipping lines, the trade connections, and the infrastructure. But I tore down everything illegal, freed the people he exploited, erased his name, and built something better. That became the foundation of my village, and the economy that sustains it. Tsunade and Jiraiya exchanged a glance. Neither spoke. Naruto leaned back, a fire burning quietly in his eyes. I may not have had their support, or their guidance, but I had my own will, my own strength, and I swore I would never let anyone chain me down again. After spending a few days in Ryaman Village, observing everything Naruto had built, Jiraiya, Tsunade, and Shizen finally prepared to leave. During their stay, they saw the village's stability, structure, and the quiet respect Naruto commanded from its people. As they stood by the village gates, ready to depart, Naruto crossed his arms and gave a dry, sarcastic smirk. So, are you going to run back and tell your precious Minato everything? Jiraiya shook his head. No, I'm not. Tsunade stepped forward, her expression firm but not unkind. I hope you know what you're doing, Naruto. Just don't go looking for trouble. Naruto nodded once. I'll be fine. Take care of yourselves. With that, the three turned and left, the gates of Ryaman closing behind them. A few weeks later, Konoha, Root Base. Beneath the surface of Konoha, in the cold, dim halls of Root headquarters, Danzo stood before a line of elite NBU operatives, masked, silent, and ready to obey without question. Ryaman has grown too bold, Danzo said, his voice low and emotionless. Naruto must be brought under control. His influence is spreading, and that poses a threat to the balance of power. He paced slowly in front of the assembled unit. You 50 will strike the village, destroy what he has built, kill the weak, make an example of them, but do not touch Naruto. He is mine to handle. The Root ANBU bowed in silent agreement. That night, the unit departed from the village, moving through forests and mountain paths with surgical precision. After several days of travel, they arrived near Ryaman's territory and set up camp in the surrounding woods, staying out of sight of patrols. They waited, they observed, and when they believed they had found a weakness, they made their move. The night of the raid. Darkness settled across the land like a thick blanket. Clouds smothered the moon, leaving the world nearly pitch black. The only light came from the distant glow of lanterns lining Ryaman village's outer walls. The root Anbu crept through the shadows, silent as ghosts. Their footsteps made no sound. Their chakra signatures were suppressed. They approached the gates, blades ready, prepared to breach and overwhelm the defenses in a swift, brutal strike. But as they neared the perimeter, the ground shimmered. Faint chakra lines, like spiderwebs across the soil, lit up with an eerie glow. Hidden seals activated one by one in a cascading ripple of light. A heartbeat later, boom! Explosive tags hidden underfoot erupted in a chain reaction. Trees around the forest perimeter moved, literally moved, as chakra-infused roots burst from the ground, striking out like living sentries. Sensor alarms flared to life. Towers that had seemed abandoned now roared with light and energy. From the village walls, shinobi poured forth, disciplined, heavily armed, and fearless. At their head were elite unit leaders, each bearing the insignia of Ryaman, a spiral flame flanked by wings of steel. And above them all, standing atop a watchtower overlooking the battlefield, was Naruto. Dressed in sleek black armor with a deep crimson sash, he gazed down at the attackers, his expression calm and unreadable. Shadow clones flickered into existence around him, already moving to deploy defenses and intercept the intruders. Naruto had been expecting them. He had prepared for this. Konoha Hokage's office. Minato sat at his desk, surrounded by scrolls and mission reports, going through the usual flood of Kage work. Ever since the invasion by Suna and Otogekure, things had slowly begun to return to normal. The village's reconstruction was ongoing, and the people were finally starting to feel a sense of stability again. But for Minato, peace was still far off. His thoughts kept circling back to a far greater threat, the Akatsuki and their pursuit of the Biju. Although Naruto had defeated the One-Tails Jinchuriki and Three-Tails Jinchuriki, those Biju might reform. It might take years, decades even, but no one knew for sure. That uncertainty gave Minato some comfort, knowing Akatsuki's plans had been disrupted for now. Still, as both Hokage and the father of two Jinchuriki, he couldn't shake the lingering fear. His concern wasn't with Mito. She trained diligently, never complained, and carried the burden of being a Jinchuriki with quiet strength. No, his real worry was Menma. Minato sighed, guilt tightening in his chest. The mistakes he made during their childhood were now catching up to him, harsh and unavoidable. In his misguided attempts to protect Menma, he had tampered with the academy records, swapping his grades with Naruto's. He had wanted to build Menma's confidence, but instead he had created a false image of success, built on lies. Worse, he had shunned Naruto in the process. Now that decision was biting him back. Hard. Jiraiya had recently trained Menma for a month leading up to the Chunin exams. Minato had hoped it would bring out his son's potential. Instead, Jiraiya handed him a report, blunt and painfully honest. He picked up the parchment again, reading over the familiar, scrawled handwriting. Lazy, complete sloth, doesn't even try. Even after knowing the shadow clone training method and still hasn't improved his chakra control, stamina, or endurance. Honestly, an 8-year-old would do better. All he does is whine about how hard training is. I hate to say it, but it'd be better if he dropped out of the shinobi program. If he had even a fraction of motivation, I wouldn't have to write this. But he doesn't. I don't know what you did, Minato, but he acts like being the Hokage's son makes him untouchable. Mito, on the other hand, she works, she fights, she pushes herself. Menma doesn't even have a drop of her drive. Minato closed the scroll, leaning back in his chair. The truth was there, spelled out clearly. Menma didn't just lack skill, he lacked the will to grow. And as his father, Minato had no one to blame but himself. His thoughts shifted now, away from Menma, away from the village, and toward his youngest son, Naruto. What he had done to Naruto, sin was far too small a word. Some might call it a failure, others a tragedy. But to Minato it felt like something darker, an abomination. A cruel and sickening injustice born not of malice, but of negligence and blind fear. His obsession with watching over the Jinchuriki, protecting them from succumbing to the Kyuubi's hatred, had made him turn a blind eye to Naruto. Worse, it had made him hate his own son without understanding why. And yet, that wasn't the true reason. Deep down, he knew it. Ever since that day when Naruto had stood in front of him and asked that one question, Minato had been haunted by it. Why? He still had no answer. He couldn't understand what led him to treat Naruto the way he did. Was it fear? Was it guilt? Was it the pressure of the Hokage's mantle warping his judgment? And now he saw the consequences. He had learned from Orochimaru, of all people, that Naruto wasn't just strong, he was a prodigy among prodigies. A genius that surpassed even Itachi Uchiha. That revelation alone had left Minato sick to his core. Not out of envy, but out of shame. He had shunned that child, his own flesh and blood. He had allowed the village to despise Naruto, to isolate him, to see him as nothing more than the vessel of the Kyuubi, never once stopping it, never once stepping in. And yet Naruto had risen without him. Minato had heard the stories, how Naruto ended the civil war in Kirigakure single-handedly, how he defeated Yagura, the Three-Tails Jinchuriki, how he'd founded a village of his own. But what shocked him most, what terrified him in a way he couldn't explain, was how Naruto had trained 6 genin to Chunin level in just 3 months. What kind of training did he put them through? What kind of will did he forge in them? Minato leaned back in his chair, fingers gripping the edge of his desk as the weight of it all came crashing down. He had made a mistake, a devastating, irreversible mistake. And now he realized he may have lost his son forever. In village, a girl with crimson-red hair lay silently on her bed, eyes wide open, staring blankly at the ceiling. The dim moonlight filtered through the curtains, casting pale shadows across the room. Silent tears rolled down her cheeks, soaking into the pillow beneath her head.
I'm sorry, lil bro.
I'm so sorry, she whispered, her voice trembling with sorrow. This was Mito, the second child of Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki. Her thoughts were consumed by one name, Naruto, her younger brother. She remembered everything, how he was treated, how he was hunted by the very people he called villagers. She had seen it all. She had watched their father raise his hand against Naruto when Menma threw a tantrum, blaming Naruto with lies and manipulation. And still, she said nothing. She remembered how their mother turned a cold shoulder, how Menma mocked Naruto, bullied him, used cheap tricks just to make him look bad, just to make their father angry enough to strike him. And she, Mito, had stood in silence. Not because she hated Naruto, never because of that. She loved him, but she failed him. She failed to defend him. She failed to comfort him. She failed to stand beside him when the entire family turned their backs on him. Not once did she tell him he mattered. Not once did she try to shield him from the pain. Over the years, she watched him grow more distant, more withdrawn. And even then, she still didn't reach out. Now he was gone. He had left the house, left the village, renounced the Namikaze name. He had chosen to walk his own path, alone. And all Mito could do now was cry. Her only wish, her only hope, was to someday tell him how sorry she was, to say what she never had the courage to say when it mattered. She had seen the change in him, the coldness in his eyes, the apathy in his voice whenever he spoke to her. He no longer looked at her with warmth, just distance. But still, she hoped. She hoped that maybe, just maybe, Naruto would give her a chance. A chance to say she's sorry. A chance to make things right. A red-haired woman in her 30s sat alone, a worn photograph clasped in her hands. It showed her family from years ago, when her children were still young. Her eyes lingered on one face in particular, Naruto's. The guilt burned deep. She had failed not just as a mother but as an Uzumaki. She had told herself for years that everything in her family was fine, clinging to that illusion until the day Naruto finally snapped. In her mind, he had always been the independent, strong one, the son who could handle himself without help. She thought her eldest needed all her attention, her care, her nurturing, while Naruto would be just fine on his own. She now saw the truth with painful clarity. Strength did not mean invulnerability. A strong child, left ignored and unseen, could still be wounded in ways no one noticed until it was too late. Shame settled heavily on her heart. The Uzumaki were known for cherishing family above all else, and she had broken that sacred code. She had become the stain on the Uzumaki bloodline, a mother who failed to protect, to guide, and to love equally. Another blonde stood in the Hokage's office, fists clenched, face flushed red, not from embarrassment, but from fury. Menma was livid. He had just finished reading the report Jiraiya submitted. It painted him in the worst light possible: lazy, unmotivated, unfit to be a shinobi. And worst of all, it compared him to Naruto. "I can't believe he wrote this," Menma shouted. "He's lying. He's just trying to make Naruto look better than me." Before the words fully left his mouth, a sharp slap rang out through the room. Minato had struck him. Menma froze. Never in his life had his father hit him. Never had he even raised his voice like this. Stunned, he opened his mouth to speak, ready to lash back, but one look at his father's face stopped him cold. There was no anger there, only regret. "I'm sorry," Minato said quietly. Menma blinked. "Huh? If only I hadn't played favorites when you were younger. Maybe you'd have grown up to be a better person," Minato said, his voice heavy with sorrow. Menma scowled. "What are you talking about? This is ridiculous. Jiraiya's lying. There's no way I'm unfit to be a shinobi. Enough." Minato's tone cracked like thunder, silencing the room. "Why don't we test that theory then?" he said coldly. "You and me, right now, a spar." Menma looked confused, but before he could speak, Minato continued. "I taught you and Mito the Rasengan a few months ago. Show me." The color drained from Menma's face. He hesitated. I haven't mastered it yet." Minato's expression didn't change. "And yet Mito has. Why?" Menma looked away, unable to answer. "Forget it. Just come at me with everything you've got." Menma growled and lunged forward, kunai in hand, fueled by frustration more than skill. But Minato moved with a simple motion. He slapped the kunai from Menma's grip and swept his legs from under him, sending him crashing to the floor. Menma lay there, stunned, staring up at the ceiling. Minato looked down at him, not with anger, but with quiet disappointment. "Look at yourself. I'm fighting you like an academy student, and you couldn't land a single hit," Minato said coldly. "And moreover, you're no longer a genin. You're back to being a civilian." "What? You can't do this to me. I'm your son," Menma shouted in rage. "Yet I did it, didn't I?" Minato replied. "I can't trust you to go on missions without endangering yourself or your teammates. You can't even defend yourself. If this spar had been a real fight, you'd be dead by now." "No way. Please, give me a chance, Dad. I'll prove myself. Don't do this to me," Menma cried out in despair. "Then train," Minato said firmly. "Show me that Jiraiya-sensei is wrong. You have 1 month. If I don't see improvement by then, say goodbye to your career as a shinobi." He turned and walked away, his cloak trailing behind him. Menma remained on the floor, silent, humiliated, and alone. Present time. Minato sat in silence, lost in thought, the weight of recent events pressing heavily on his shoulders. His mind wandered, from Naruto's cold eyes to Jiraiya's report, to the way Menma had fallen so easily in their spar. Every memory, every mistake, replayed itself like a curse he couldn't escape. Then,
Bang!
The doors to the Hokage's office slammed open with such force that the papers on his desk flew into the air and scattered across the floor. Startled, Minato snapped out of his thoughts and looked up. Standing in the doorway were Tsunade, Jiraiya, and Shizune, with Taunton cradled in her arms. But it wasn't the numbers that alarmed him, it was Tsunade's expression. Her eyes were blazing, her fists clenched, her body trembling with fury. Minato knew that look all too well. She was furious, and judging by the glance she threw Jiraiya, she had likely just learned the full extent of what he had done to Naruto. And Minato realized something else. He was the target of her wrath. He straightened in his chair immediately. "Umbu, leave us. Now," Minato ordered. The masked shinobi silently obeyed, vanishing from the office in a swirl of flickering shadows. Minato raised his hand, weaving a quick seal. A glowing ring of chakra pulsed in the air, a silencing seal. No one outside this room would hear what was about to be said. He stood from his chair and walked around the desk, standing before it, facing them directly. Tsunade and Jiraiya stepped forward. Shizune followed close behind, tense but silent. Tsunade's eyes locked with his. "So," she began, voice tight with fury, "you already know why I'm here. You ready yourself like a man expecting to be punched." Minato didn't look away. He couldn't. "I have no excuse for what I did," he said, voice low. "What I did to Naruto, it's beyond a sin. It's an abomination, a stain I can never wash away." Tsunade's fists slowly unclenched, just slightly. "As much as I wanted to pummel you through that wall," she said coldly, "after seeing what Naruto's become, how far he's grown despite everything, I realized no punch I give you will hurt more than the reality you're already living with." Minato bowed his head in shame, silent. "Then tell me," Tsunade demanded, stepping forward, towering over him now. "Why? Why the hell did you do it? Why did you treat your own son like that?" "I don't know," Minato muttered. Crack. Tsunade's fist slammed into his face before anyone could react, sending Minato flying backward into his desk. The wooden frame shattered beneath the impact, splinters flying across the room. Jiraiya winced, Shizune gasped, even Taunton squealed. Minato groaned and slowly pulled himself up from the wreckage, rubbing the growing bruise on his cheek where Tsunade's punch had landed. "Speak, now," she snarled. He leaned against the broken remains of the desk, exhaling shakily. I thought I needed to focus more on Menma and Mito, because they held the Kyuubi," he said quietly. "I thought that if I gave them all my attention, all my care, I could keep them from falling into the Kyuubi's hatred. I believed, stupidly, that pampering them would protect them." He looked up at her then, eyes clouded with regret. "But after everything that's happened, after seeing how Naruto turned out and how Menma turned out, I realized that wasn't the reason, not the whole reason." He looked away again, ashamed. "The truth is, I don't know why I treated Naruto the way I did." "Where is Kushina?" Tsunade demanded, her tone sharp and impatient. "She's at home," Minato replied quietly. His voice carried pain and exhaustion. "She hasn't been herself ever since Naruto left. She keeps saying she's a failure as an Uzumaki." Tsunade sighed, crossing her arms. "Fine, I'll deal with her later. For now, we have more pressing matters to discuss." "What kind of matters?" Minato asked, trying to refocus. Jiraiya stepped forward, pulling a scroll from his back along with several files. "These just came in," he said grimly, handing them over. Minato unrolled the scroll and began skimming through the documents. With each page, his expression tightened, confusion shifting into anger. Just as he was about to turn to the last report, a sudden flutter of wings cut through the silence. A messenger hawk landed on the window ledge. Minato immediately moved toward it, untying the small scroll attached to its leg. He channeled a trace of chakra through it to break the seal, and what happened next froze the room. The moment the scroll opened, several dismembered corpses fell out, hitting the floor with sickening thuds. Tontan squealed in terror. Minato and the others instantly recognized the uniforms on the bodies, root operatives. In stunned silence, Minato reached for the letter attached to the bloodstained scroll. His hand trembled slightly as he unfolded it, the crimson smears across the paper making the words harder to read. Whatever message it contained had the power to shake even the Hokage to his core. His voice broke the silence. "It's from Naruto." He began to read aloud. "Hokage, I assume you've already seen my message. I don't know if you had a direct hand in this, but by sending your ninja to attack my village, you've declared war on us. If it's war you want, then I'll show you what a real war is. You won't stand a chance. I suggest you put your lackeys in their place. As for the one responsible, I'm waiting for your response. Ryaman Village." Minato's grip tightened on the letter, his teeth gritting. "Danzo, damn that fool. I warned him not to cause any more trouble, but that fool never listens." His voice trembled between anger and frustration. He turned toward Jiraiya, eyes narrowing. "And these files you handed me, where did you get them?" Jiraiya's face darkened as he exhaled heavily. "From Naruto," he said quietly. Minato froze. "What?" Jiraiya nodded grimly. "We went to visit the village he's building. It's unlike anything we've ever seen. A place for outcasts. People betrayed by their clans, abandoned by their villages, and those who had nowhere left to go. Naruto's building something extraordinary there." He paused, remembering what he had seen. "He doesn't act like a lord or a ruler. He lives among his people, works with them, trains them, eats with them. There are no titles, no hierarchy. Respect in that village isn't given, it's earned through actions. And from what we've seen, Naruto has earned it 100 times over." Tsunade listened silently, her eyes hardening as Jiraiya continued. "After killing Orochimaru, Naruto and his team raided all of his hidden laboratories. They discovered his experiments and every one of his secret dealings, including those with Danzo." Jiraiya's tone turned sharp. He found evidence of how Danzo desecrated the first Hokage's remains and harvested Uchiha Sharingan from those killed in the Third Ninja War. There were even records showing a deal with Orochimaru to eliminate both you and Sensei, so Danzo could take the Hokage's seat. Minato's jaw tightened, fury flickering in his eyes. "And judging by the root corpses that came with the letter," Jiraiya added grimly, "it looks like Danzo sent them to intimidate Naruto, maybe to force him to submit, but it backfired. Badly." The room fell into heavy silence again, the implications sinking in. What started as fragments of guilt and fear was now becoming something much more dangerous. A storm born from betrayal, truth, and a child long abandoned. "Umbu." Minato's voice cut through the tense air. An ANBU operative landed in front of him, dropping to one knee. "Lord Hokage, call for an emergency council meeting," Minato ordered firmly. The ANBU nodded and vanished in a flicker of motion. Tsunade crossed her arms, watching him closely. "What are you planning to do?" she asked. Minato's gaze hardened. "We're bringing Danzo in for questioning immediately, and I want everyone prepared. We don't know what kind of vile tricks he still has up his sleeve. The moment he steps inside, seal his chakra completely. Make sure he can't move or use substitution. Most importantly, tie his hands. I don't want him forming a single hand seal." Tsunade raised a brow. "And after that?" Minato exhaled slowly, the weight of the situation pressing heavily on him. Before he could respond, Tsunade spoke again, her tone more composed this time. "They'll want to know how you found out," she said. "You should tell them what Naruto is building out there." Minato nodded solemnly. "I'll explain everything to the council," Tsunade continued. "Maybe, just maybe, They'll finally learn something from him. Minato's eyes grew distant as he gave a slow nod. Let's hope so, before it's too late. Council chambers. All the elders of the village clans were waiting in their designated seats. Some were quietly conversing with each other, while others, like Hayashi Hyuga and Fugaku Uchiha, sat in silence, observing the room. Breaking the hush, Koharu spoke up. Does anyone know why this emergency meeting was called? We're wondering the same, replied Hiruzen Sarutobi, the third Hokage, his voice calm but curious. As speculation rippled quietly among the elders, the doors to the council room opened. All eyes turned as Minato Namikaze entered, flanked by Jiraiya and, to everyone's surprise, Tsunade. Whispers broke out. Tsunade hadn't set foot in the village for as long as many of them could remember. Minato walked steadily toward the Hokage's seat, his eyes scanning the room. He paused briefly as his gaze landed on one individual, Danzo. Jiraiya took his place behind Minato, standing tall and alert. Tsunade, meanwhile, sat beside Kushina. Kushina gave her a small, warm smile, but Tsunade didn't respond, not even a nod. The tension in the room grew thicker. Danzo broke the silence, his tone edged with impatience. Minato, can you tell us why we've been summoned so suddenly? Minato's reply was sharp and unwavering. That's Hokage-sama to you, Danzo. I believe you know that well. Danzo immediately lowered his head. Yes, Hokage-sama. Minato took a deep breath, his expression grave. I know you're all wondering why this emergency meeting was called without notice. The reason is simple. I've uncovered a serious breach in village security and several other disturbing matters that require immediate attention. Minato turned his head toward Jiraiya and gave a subtle nod. Jiraiya stepped forward to the center of the room, unrolling a large scroll with practiced hands. A pulse of chakra activated its seal, and with a burst of smoke, a series of gruesome corpses were revealed. Gasps echoed around the room. Even hardened clan heads, veterans of countless battles, flinched at the sight. Laid out in front of them were the bodies of a dozen shinobi, cleaved cleanly in half with surgical precision. The cuts were so smooth, so deliberate, it was as if they'd been dissected rather than killed. What the hell is this? Roared Hamura, unable to contain his horror. They look like NBU, muttered Fugaku, narrowing his eyes. But not any ANBU I recognize. Danzo's expression remained still, but those who watched him closely could see the tension in his jaw. These are root operatives, said Hiruzen, his voice heavy. The room fell into stunned silence. Danzo, Hiruzen turned toward him, his eyes cold. I ordered you to disband Root years ago, yet here they are. You've continued it behind my back, haven't you? I have no idea what you're talking about, Danzo said evenly. Minato's palm slammed down on the desk with a sharp crack, making several of the elders flinch. Don't lie to us, Danzo, he said, his tone like steel. We've all known about your shadow operations for years, but now people have died. So tell us what happened here. Who killed them? Sum Inuzuka leaned forward, her voice low but direct. Yeah, and why were they even out there? Who were they targeting? Minato didn't hesitate. Naruto. The name hit the council like a shockwave. Naruto, Inoichi said, stunned. Why would Naruto kill them? Why would he even be a target? Tsunade crossed her arms, eyes locked on Danzo. Maybe the better question is, why wouldn't he? Anyone would strike back if their home was attacked. Don't forget, Naruto has his own village now. Shikaku Nara's mind raced. So, you're saying Root agents attacked the village Naruto founded and he defended it. Is that it, Hokage-sama? Danzo's eyes narrowed. I had nothing to do with this. Minato's glare sharpened. You expect us to believe Root acts without your knowledge? They never moved without your direct orders. You sent them to attack Naruto. Why? Danzo finally let the mask slip, just a little. That boy, he's a shinobi of Konoha, like it or not. And now he's using techniques no one has ever seen before, abilities we can't identify, can't predict. We should bring him back. Make him loyal to this village. Demand he teach us those techniques. You all seem to have forgotten how Konoha treated him. What if he returns for revenge? The silence that followed was thick. Danzo's words echoed uncomfortably in the minds of everyone present. For the first time, some began to ask themselves, not if Naruto had the power to destroy the village, but why he hadn't already. Before anyone could speak, Minato's voice cut through the room like a blade. Do you know what acting behind the Hokage's back is called? Danzo? He said, eyes burning with fury. Treason. Danzo flinched. He's had every reason to destroy Konoha, but he didn't, Minato continued, his voice rising. And now, because of your greed, because of your obsession with control, you've given him the perfect justification to strike. This wasn't for the village. This was for your ego. Minato reached into his cloak and pulled out a folded letter, holding it high. This is a letter Naruto sent me. I received it a few minutes ago. Read it. He passed it to the nearest clan head, Fugaku Uchiha. The scroll made its way around the room in tense silence, each face growing more troubled as they read its contents. Troublesome, Shikaku Nara muttered under his breath, rubbing his temples. Danzo, now red with fury, shot to his feet. So, that's it? You're going to surrender me? Hand me over to that boy just because he made a few threats? Are you willing to betray one of your own elders for the demands of a child? Minato didn't even look at him. Sensei, he said calmly. In a flash, Jiraiya appeared behind Danzo and slapped a chakra suppression seal on his back. Before Danzo could react, his chakra was sealed, and Jiraiya dragged him forcefully to the center of the room. Suddenly, root operatives burst through the windows and shadows, rushing to Danzo's aid. But Tsunade was faster. With a single ground-shaking punch and a pulse of chakra, she incapacitated them all in seconds, bodies scattered, unconscious or restrained. Then, without a word, Jiraiya pulled off the cloak covering Danzo's right arm and began unwrapping the layers of bandages. What they saw made the room collectively recoil. Danzo's right arm was a grotesque fusion of wood and flesh, like a tree limb infused with chakra, pulsing unnaturally. But the real horror was embedded in the arm itself. A dozen Sharingan eyes stared back at them. The room erupted in gasps of disbelief and disgust. What the hell is that? Roared some Inuzuka. His arm. It's like a damn experiment, Hamura whispered, pale. Minato didn't speak. His expression was grim. But no one was more affected than Fugaku Uchiha. He stood slowly, his face a mask of rage and betrayal as he stared at the sickening sight of his clan's stolen legacy embedded in Danzo's arm. Minato! Fugaku's voice was low, dangerous. What is this? That's a dozen Sharingan. Where did he get those eyes? That thought echoed silently in every council member's mind. Minato looked around the room. This, he said, is the truth I wanted you all to see. Chapter 4. Silence fell across the room, even the whistle of wind was stopped. All this time, Minato said, his voice cold with restrained fury. We've been harboring a traitor among us, a man willing to betray anyone, do anything, no matter how vile or heinous, to achieve his goals. He stood from his chair and placed a thick stack of files on the table for the council to see. These are the documents I reviewed a few minutes ago, he said. They are undeniable proof of Danzo's treason, his secret dealings with Orochimaru, and their desecration of the first Hokage's grave. They harvested Hashirama Senju cells and used them in twisted experiments, trying to recreate would release. Gasps and curses broke out among the council. Minato continued, voice unwavering. Most of their experiments failed. Only 2 subjects survived. One is Danzo, The other, our ANBU agent who was kidnapped by Orochimaru as a child. The uproar in the room exploded into outrage. Enough! Minato's voice thundered. The room quieted, tension crackling like lightning in the air. I know you're all furious, Minato said, his tone calmer but heavy. But there's more. Danzo and Orochimaru's ambitions didn't stop with wood release. Their ultimate goal was to obtain the legendary dojutsu, the Rinnegan. Gasps spread again, this time with disbelief. The Rinnegan? Hayashi Hyuga frowned. But isn't that just a myth? The legends say all dojutsu originated from it, but there are no real records of it ever existing. Fugaku nodded slowly. There's no mention of it in the Uchiha archives either. If it were real, we would have known. Then Jiraiya stepped forward. His expression was somber. It's real, he said quietly. I've seen it. So has Tsunade and Orochimaru. The room fell into stunned silence. It's a purple eye, Jiraiya continued, with ripple-like patterns spreading across the eyeball. During the Second Shinobi War, we were in Amigakure. That's where we met 3 war orphans. One of them had the Rinnegan. He didn't understand it, didn't know how to use its power, but the eye was there. Undeniable. A beat passed. Then why didn't you bring him to Konoha? Demanded Koharu. He could have been an asset to the village. Tsunade's chair scraped the floor as she stood, her voice sharp. Shut up, you old hag. Jiraiya didn't hold back either. You think we should have dragged a war-torn child to Konoha like some weapon? Is that all you see people as tools for your power games? Unlike you, we still have morals. That boy was a victim of war, not a prize. Koharu and Hamura fell into stunned silence as the rest of the council looked on, divided between shock, shame, and rising anger. After a long, tense silence, Minato spoke again. But to our luck, he said, Orochimaru failed. He never acquired the Rinnegan. He got nothing from that pursuit. A collective sigh of relief moved through the council. For a moment, the weight on their shoulders seemed lighter. But Minato's gaze shifted, sharp and unwavering, as he turned to Fugaku Uchiha. Danzo's arm, the Sharingan embedded in it. He harvested them from fallen Uchiha, from your clansmen who died during the Third Shinobi War. He plucked their eyes and cultivated them for his own use. A sick, disgusted silence swept over the room. Minato narrowed his eyes. But the question remains, why implant them in his arm? Why not in his head, where the Sharingan is most effective? Do you have any idea, Fugaku? Fugaku was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke, his voice dark and steady. There's only one reason someone would do that, Izanagi. The council stirred, confused. Izanagi? Tsume asked. What's that? It's a forbidden Uchiha technique, Fugaku explained grimly. A kinjutsu passing down since Warring States era. It allows the user to bend reality to rewrite death itself. But it comes at a price. Each use permanently blinds the eye that performs it. His eyes narrowed at Danzo's limp form on the floor. If he embedded multiple Sharingan into his arm, it was so he could spam Izanagi, sacrifice one eye at a time, and make himself functionally immortal. That's why he did it. The weight of that truth sank into the council like a stone. Danzo hadn't just betrayed the village. He had tried to become a god. Without hesitation, Jiraiya swung his blade and severed Danzo's right arm. It hit the floor with a sickening thud, the embedded Sharingan eyes staring lifelessly from the dismembered limb. And there's one last thing, Minato said, his voice cold and steady. The entire room tensed, fear and unease thick in the air. Danzo, Minato continued, you conspired with Orochimaru during the Konoha invasion. You helped him, hoping he'd kill me and Lord Third, so Thadiao called take the Hokage's seat. The council erupted in shock and outrage. You bastard! How dare you! Roared Tsume Inuzuka. She lunged forward, throwing a punch aimed straight at Danzo's face. Enough, Minato commanded, his tone cutting through the chaos. He stepped closer to Danzo, eyes blazing. Tell us the truth. Why did you do all of this? And don't give me another excuse about Konoha's good. None of your actions ever protected this village. They only damaged it. Danzo raised his head, his expression twisted with contempt. You're all weak, he spat. You call yourselves leaders, yet you hide behind peace. A peace that only invites enemies to strike. If we truly wanted peace, Konoha should rule the world. The other villages should kneel beneath us. Disgust rippled through the council. The silence that followed his words was heavier than before. Breaking the tense quiet, Shikaku sighed. There's still one thing that's bothering us. Minato nodded knowingly. You mean, how we learned all of this? The council members exchanged silent agreement. It was Naruto, Jiraiya said, stepping forward. He's the one who uncovered all of it, every detail. A murmur spread around the room as the weight of Jiraiya's words settled in. The name Naruto now carried not just strength, but a truth that shattered the very foundations of the council. But where did he get all this information? Asked Inoichi, brows furrowed. And when exactly did you meet him? Jiraiya folded his arms. After Naruto killed Orochimaru, he and his team personally raided all of his hidden bases. Every lab, every safe house. He dug through everything Orochimaru left behind. Documents, journals, scrolls, recordings. All of it. The room fell silent, the weight of that statement hitting hard. So that means, Koharu's voice broke through. He must have found jutsu scrolls and, more importantly, the notes from Orochimaru's experiments. Where are they? Did you confiscate them? Bring them back. He burned them all, Jiraiya said flatly. What? Koharu shouted, aghast. Does he not understand how valuable those notes are? Jiraiya's eyes snapped toward her, his voice cold and without a hint of humor. Do you seriously believe anything valuable can come from Orochimaru's sick, twisted experiments? If you think that, Koharu, then you're no better than he was. Koharu froze in place. The room remained silent. Breaking the tension, Tsunade stepped forward. And before you ask, yes, we met him. We visited the village he's building. That caught everyone's attention. For the first time since the meeting began, Kushina lifted her head. There was a faint light in her eyes, a fragile hope, as she asked, How is it? Inoichi leaned forward slightly, curious. Yeah. What's it like? Tsunade glanced at Jiraiya, then back at the council. It's unlike anything we've ever seen, she said. A village not built on bloodlines or nobility, but on survival, on trust. It's a home for orphans, outcasts, those abandoned by their families or betrayed by their own villages. She took a deep breath before continuing. The people there don't care about noble titles, rank, or bloodline prestige. They looked us straight in the eyes and told us to our faces. The title of legendary Sannin means nothing to them. Respect in that village isn't given because of your name. You earn it by your actions. They call him Naruto-sama, Jiraiya added. But not because he demanded it or claimed leadership. He never ordered anyone to serve him. He lives among them, works with them, eats with them. And everything he's done, for every child, every family, earned him that respect. The houses, Tsunade added, though simple, are clean and sturdy. Even Naruto's own home is modest. When we asked him why, he said, If we are all equal, then I have no reason to live in luxury while others don't. A deep silence followed, not the silence of tension, but of revelation. For the first time, the elders, the clan heads, all of them, were struck not by fear of the boy, but by admiration. A 13-year-old, murmured Shikaku, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. With this much insight, humility, and leadership, that's not something you can teach. Even Hayashi Hyuga looked impressed. Kushina closed her eyes, a tear slipping down her cheek, this time not out of sorrow, but pride. It seems, Hiruzen said softly, breaking the silence, Naruto inherited the same vision as the first Hokage. He's building his village on a principle that once guided ours, where everyone can live in peace, regardless of their past or origin. Several council members nodded slowly, visibly reflecting on those words. But then Inoichi frowned and leaned forward. That's all admirable, but building a village, especially one that size, is no small feat. The infrastructure, supplies, housing, where's he getting the money? The rest of the council murmured in agreement. It was a valid point. Jiraiya smirked slightly, as if expecting the question. Have any of you heard of Ryman Industries? He asked. Hayashi's eyes narrowed. You mean the new corporation that started a few months ago? It's been growing rapidly. Some say it's already rivaling our own commerce in certain sectors. Exactly, Jiraiya nodded. Naruto owns it. That statement dropped like a bomb in the room. What? Sum blinked. He owns that company? But how? Asked Inoichi, genuinely confused. Building a business empire like that should take years. And he's 13. Jiraiya's smirk faded into a more serious expression. Because it's not a new company, he said. It's a reformed one. Ryman Industries was originally Gato Industries. Yes, the same corrupt empire Gato used for smuggling, extortion, and black market trade. The room stiffened in realization. After Naruto left Konoha, Jiraiya continued. He hunted down Gato's entire network, dismantled the illegal operations, ended the trafficking, and seized all the assets. Then, instead of hoarding the wealth, he used it to build something new, something clean. He turned Gato's corruption into a foundation for something just, Tsunade added. And now that company is funding his village, legally and efficiently. Hayashi leaned back, clearly surprised. To take over a corrupt empire, purge it, and rebuild it in a matter of months. That takes vision, power, and more than anything, discipline. The room fell into thoughtful silence again. This time, they weren't just speaking about Naruto as a boy with potential. They were beginning to understand. He was already a leader. It seems he planned this for months, maybe even years, Shikaku said quietly. This level of foresight and execution doesn't happen overnight. The others nodded in agreement. I've heard he's a prodigy among prodigies, Tsunade murmured. Some even say his genius surpasses Itachi Uchiha's. This village never gave him the chance to show it, but judging by what he's accomplished on his own, it's clearly true. Minato and Kushina only felt regret. As they all fell into silence, deep in thought, Danzo suddenly chuckled darkly. That boy is as naive as you are, he said coldly. He thinks peace lasts, but peace is an illusion, a false sense of security. The shinobi world doesn't allow peace to rule. He might be strong now, but power only invites more enemies. Enemies will come, and they won't stop until they destroy him, or he destroys himself. And what if the very people he protects turn against him? That boy is a fool. Enough, Minato shouted, stepping forward, his voice echoing through the chamber. Danzo, for your crimes against Konoha, waging an unnecessary war against other villages, illegally stealing bloodlines, desecrating the first Hokage's grave, attempting a coup, creating your own private military force, trafficking children, aiding an S-rank criminal and conspiring with him. For all these crimes, you are hereby sentenced to execution. Danzo's eyes blazed with fury. Do you think killing me will make Konoha safe? He roared. I've protected this village from the shadows for years. I eliminated threats before they ever reached your doorstep. Everything I did was to make Konoha number one. Wait, came Inoichi's voice. What is it, Inoichi? Minato asked, turning to him. First, we need to gather information from him about his root bases and the remaining members. We don't know where they are. What if they attack the village when they find out their master is dead? His voice lowered, filled with shame. As a clan head, I'm ashamed to admit this, but Danzo blackmailed me into giving up some of my clan's members to Root. At first, I resisted, but then the missions I received were either faked or rigged. I survived several assassination attempts. Eventually, I had no choice. If I didn't comply, my entire clan would have suffered. He did the same with me, said Shibi Aburaim, stepping forward quietly. Minato clenched his fists. His rage flared at the revelations, but he forced himself to stay calm. Inoichi was right. As much as Danzo deserved execution, they couldn't afford to leave the village vulnerable. Not yet. All right, Inoichi, can you read his mind so we can locate the Root bases and find out how many members he has? Asked Minato. All right, Inoichi, read his mind so we can locate the Root bases and find out how many members he has? Asked Minato. Inoichi stepped forward to enter Danzo's mind, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't. No use, said Inoichi with a frown. What do you mean? Asked Jiraiya. Something is preventing me from entering his mind. He might be using some seals, replied Inoichi. Let me have a look then, said Jiraiya as he began to examine Danzo's body for any seals. After several minutes of careful inspection, Jiraiya dispelled a dozen seals layered across Danzo's chakra network. All right, I've removed the seals I found, he said. With that, Inoichi tried again. This time, his eyes narrowed as he focused, and then relaxed. Okay, I have the information, Hokage-sama. Minato nodded. ANBU, he called. Four masked ANBU operatives landed before him, kneeling. Do what Inoichi says. The ANBU nodded silently. Hokage-sama, there's also something else. Something important, said Inoichi. Minato looked at him and said nothing, prompting him to continue. This bastard kidnapped clan orphans. Uchiha, Hyuga, Akimichi, and Nara children whose parents were killed, along with a number of civilian orphans. Hearing this, the clan heads of Nara, Hyuga, Akimichi, and Uchiha bristled. Each looked as if they wanted to kill Danzo themselves. Hokage-sama, came Fugaku's voice, calm but cutting. If you don't mind, may I suggest something? Minato nodded. It might sound cruel, but a simple execution isn't enough for what he did. My eldest has his Mangekyo Sharingan, and it holds a special genjutsu, Tsukuyomi. Inside it, Itachi controls time. A day there can be an hour outside. What if we put Danzo through that? Fugaku suggested. Others gasped. It sounded brutal. Fugaku was proposing more than a one-time execution for Danzo's crimes. I second it, said Tsum Inuzuka. As harsh as it sounds, kidnapping children for his own ends isn't something I can let slide. Minato sighed, gathering his thoughts. Before he could speak, Hiruzen interjected. I've heard that overusing the Mangekyo Sharingan can blind its user. Are you sure about this? We're letting our anger guide us, but we should consider Itachi's well-being. From what I've seen, he's a pacifist who doesn't enjoy torturing his enemies. Asking him to do this could harm him, not to mention the risk to his career as a ninja. The room fell silent as the others absorbed his words. They realized they couldn't risk another ninja's future for the sake of revenge. Fugaku nodded in understanding. Fine, Minato said. But first, we need to take care of Root. Everyone nodded in agreement. Anything else, Minato? Hiruzen asked. Minato nodded slowly. One final thing. It's not an immediate threat, but it's still a danger, not just to us, but to all the other nations as well. That caught everyone's attention. A threat to the entire shinobi world wasn't something to take lightly. A month ago, Jiraiya-sensei informed me about a group of S-class criminals called the Akatsuki. In an unknown location, deep within a hidden cave, 9 shadowy figures stood in a perfect circle before a colossal, demonic statue. Their bodies shimmered like black, oily mist, their eyes the only visible parts of their forms, glowing faintly in the dim light. The one-tail and the three-tail are gone, said the leader, Pain, his voice calm yet commanding. Toby's single, glowing right eye gleamed beneath his mask. Yes, according to Zetsu's report, the former son of the fourth Hokage, Naruto, defeated them, killed both with a single strike. Deidara snorted, folding his arms. You expect us to believe that? It's up to you whether you believe it or not, Toby replied smoothly. But there's more. He's built his own village, calls a Triamen, a refuge for outcasts, orphans, and those betrayed by their villages. In just 3 months, he trained 6 genin to Chunin level strength. The revelation sparked unease among the group. Sasori, Deidara, Kakuzu, and Kisame exchanged surprised glances under the flickering torchlight. Pain's eyes narrowed. You said, former son. Give us complete information, his history, why he left the village, everything. Toby sighed, his tone turning playful. You know, well, talking for long makes me tired, he said, adopting his signature goofy voice. Fine, listen. Toby began, his tone shifting from playful to serious. It's a long story. Naruto Uzumaki, the youngest son of Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki. He paused, letting the name sink in. From what Zetsu gathered, he's a prodigy among prodigies. Some even claim his genius surpasses that of Itachi Uchiha. That statement immediately caught everyone's attention. All eyes turned toward Toby. But, he continued, for reasons no one truly understands, his own family cast him aside. His father treated him like trash, his mother ignored him, and his elder siblings despised him. The most absurd part. Toby let out a soft chuckle. The entire village believed Huesty Ninetails reincarnated. Sometimes, they even beat him in the streets, and Minato did nothing to stop it. Several of the shadowed figures snorted at the irony. Konoha's great hero ignoring his own blood. Now, about the other two, Toby said, his tone turning dismissive. Menma the Jinchuriki is pathetic.
A useless brat.
Of all the Jinchuriki, he's the easiest target. Honestly, he shouldn't have graduated from the academy at all, but Minato pulled some strings. His sister, the second Jinchuriki, might be a little trouble. She's strong, but nowhere near her brother Naruto's level. Compared to her, Menma's just dead weight. When they graduated, Naruto was assigned to a mission in the Land of Waves, Toby continued. During that mission, he killed the demon brothers. Kisame let out a scoff, his shark-like grin widening. They were a disgrace to the title demon. Indeed, Toby said. On that same mission, Naruto encountered Zabuza and his apprentice. After completing the assignment, he officially resigned from Konoha and began his own path. Not long after, he sought out Zabuza and his apprentice, a survivor of the Yuki clan. Now, both serve under him. Kisame's grin deepened. Zabuza working for him, huh? Interesting. And a Yuki clan member too. This keeps getting better. After that, Toby continued. Naruto went to the Mist Village and struck a deal with Mei Terumi, the leader of the rebels. In exchange for Zabuza's freedom, he promised to end the civil war within an hour. And he did. He used a technique, probably wind-based, that no one had ever seen before. With surgical precision, he cleaved Yagura in half, ending the war and erasing the Three Tails in the process. The cave fell silent as the weight of his words hung in the air. Once the conflict ended, Naruto chose a place of his own, Toby said in a low voice. He named it Triamen, and there, he began to build his own village. Hearing Toby's words, the entire group fell silent. None of them had ever heard of anyone taking down a Jinchuriki, much less one capable of controlling their tailed beast with a single strike. The revelation left them unsettled, each silently wondering what kind of jutsu Naruto had used to accomplish such a feat. Toby continued, his tone steady. During Orochimaru's invasion of Konoha, Naruto stepped in once more. He killed Gaara, the Jinchuriki of the One Tail, along with his siblings. Later, when Hiruzen attempted the Reaper Death Seal to stop Orochimaru and the reanimated first and second Hokage, Naruto intervened again. He killed Orochimaru himself, using the same technique he used on Yagura, though slightly modified. This time, he didn't just cut him down. He diced him into countless small cubes. Deidara smirked, letting out a low chuckle. Heh, so the snake turned into snake meat for a barbecue. And later, Toby went on. Naruto hunted down every one of Orochimaru's hidden bases and destroyed them all. Konan tilted her head slightly, her calm voice breaking the silence. And through all of that, he never took revenge on Konoha after everything they did to him. Toby shrugged, his usual goofy tone returning. Yup, no idea why. Maybe he's just saving it for later. Conan's eyes narrowed. What about the latest news? Oh, that. Toby chuckled lightly. Danzo sent his root agents to attack Ryaman. Konan crossed her arms. I assume that didn't end well. Yup, Toby replied cheerfully. Not only did it fail, but Naruto also sent a message back, a little reminder to Minato to keep his dogs on a leash. He smirked beneath his mask. And that, my friends, is his story so far. A heavy silence settled over the chamber as the weight of Toby's story sank in. It was a lot to take in. Konan was the first to speak. From what you said, he kills without mercy. And yet he built a village for outcasts and orphans. That's completely contradictory. And why didn't he kill Zabuza and his apprentice during that mission if they were enemies? I've been wondering the same thing, Toby admitted, his usual levity fading. Kisame spoke up, his tone curious. So, he probably knows about us then? Of course, Toby replied. Since Orochimaru was a former member, he must have left records about Akatsuki. Naruto likely knows everything we stand for. Kisame grinned. Then maybe we should invite him to join us. Pain's voice cut through the air.
No.
The sudden firmness in his tone caught several off guard. Kisame, Kakuzu, and Deidara all turned toward him with surprised expressions. Any reason? Kakuzu asked flatly. Pain's eyes glowed faintly. He's interfered with our plans twice. Whether by choice or coincidence, we don't know. But because of him, we've been set back to the beginning. It could take years for the tailed beasts to reform. We cannot risk bringing someone into our ranks who might disrupt us again. Konan folded her arms. Do you think he'll try to stop us? Pain's expression remained unreadable. He can try if he wishes, but he cannot defeat a god. For now, our focus remains the same. We gather funds, prepare ourselves, and hunt down the remaining bijou. Whether the one-tail and three-tail reform or not, we will still achieve our goal. The Circle of Nine stood in silence once more, the eerie glow of the demonic statue casting long shadows behind them, each member quietly weighing the threat of the boy who dared defy fate itself. With that, they all disappeared. At an unknown location. A man with an orange mask bearing a single eye on the left was now furious. No, he was enraged. Damn you, Naruto. You delayed my plans. Years of planning went wrong. I should have killed you the night you were born, roared Toby. It seems your sensei went senile for reasons unknown. He unintentionally caused us trouble twice. First 13 years ago when he attacked and made you run like a coward, and now he's produced a prodigy, said White Zetsu from the corner. Shut up, Zetsu. Damn you, Minato. I knew you were a failure when you failed to protect Rin all those years ago, and now you've proven it again and again, growled Toby. Well, we lost the Three Tails because of your petty revenge, said Black Zetsu. What are you talking about? Asked Toby, also known as Obito Uchiha. Aren't you the one who put Yagura under a genjutsu so he initiated the bloodline purge in the mist? And now, because of that, mist rebels have formed, and in an unexpected turn, Naruto killed Yagura. We lost the Three Tails, said Black Zetsu. Shut up. Those bastards deserved it for what they did to Rin. Yes, we didn't expect this to happen. I wanted to kill Yagura after he eliminated everyone in the mist, said Obito. But don't worry. Did you forget that after Rin died, it took half a decade for the Three Tails to reform? Said White Zetsu. Chapter 5. Konoha Council Chambers. So that's it, Minato said firmly, addressing the gathered clan leaders. Inform your clan members, if they ever encounter any of them, they are to retreat immediately. Do not engage. Their attire is distinctive. Black cloaks with red clouds on the back. The clan heads and elders nodded, rising to leave. As the doors closed behind them, only Minato, Kushina, Jiraiya, Tsunade, and Hiruzen remained in the room. It's good to have you back, Tsunade, Hiruzen said, offering a gentle smile. Tsunade crossed her arms and shot him a sharp look. Don't get the wrong idea, old man. I'm not here to stay. I came because that bastard desecrated my grandfather's legacy, and I won't leave until he pays for it. Hiruzen smirked faintly. Funny, coming from the same person who once said she'd never set foot in this village again, no matter what happened to it. Tsunade let out an exasperated sigh. Will you just stop it, sensei? I have more important matters to discuss, but not here. Her eyes drifted briefly toward Kushina, the message clear but unspoken. The atmosphere grew heavy, tension pressing down on everyone in the room. Without a word, they left the council chamber and made their way into Minato's office. Shizen followed quietly behind, Tun-Tun nestled in her arms. Kushina's hands trembled. Her heart pounded with dread. She already knew what this was about. Suddenly, the sharp sound of 2 slaps echoed through the office. Kushina's head jerked to the side, both her cheeks now burning red, the imprint of Tsunade's hand clearly visible. What the hell were you thinking, Kushina? Tsunade roared, her voice shaking with anger. Do you have any idea what you've done? You ignored your own son, made him feel unwanted. What in the world got into you? I never remember you being like this. And yet, you did it to your own child. Kushina lowered her head, silent. Speak, Tsunade demanded. I thought Naruto was strong, Kushina stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. Independent. I believed he could manage on his own. So I thought it was better if I gave all my attention to Menma and Mito. Slap. Tsunade's eyes blazed. Do you even hear yourself, Kushina? Just because someone's strong doesn't mean they don't need love. He's your child. You, of all people, should understand loneliness. You suffered it after your grandmother died. And yet you made your own son feel the same pain. Kushina's composure broke. Tears streamed down her face as she collapsed onto her knees. I know. I realized it. But it's too late. Naruto's gone. He'll never forgive us. I failed the one thing I dreamed of being. I failed as a mother. I'm a disgrace to the Uzumaki name. Her sobs filled the room, raw and hollow, as the others stood in solemn silence, each weighed down by the regret that came too late. Kushina slowly wiped the tears from her swollen eyes, her voice trembling as she spoke. Tsunade, please just tell me. How is he? Is he okay? Her tone cracked with desperation. It's been months since I last saw him. Please, Tsunade, I'm begging you. Tsunade let out a long, heavy sigh, her anger softening into pity. He's fine, Kushina, she said quietly. He's doing well, happy. In that village he built. He finally found peace far away from you and this village. Kushina's breath hitched, her eyes welling again. This time not from guilt or anger, but from the bittersweet relief that her son was alive and content, just not with her. Where are Menma and Mito? Tsunade asked. At home, Kushina replied. Tsunade turned sharply to Hiruzen. You old man. What were you doing while Naruto was being treated like that in his own village? Were you too busy indulging in the smut this idiot writes to notice? You didn't help him, not once. And now look at the result. He's gone. Be grateful he didn't destroy the village when he had the chance, she said, her voice heavy with anger. Hiruzen lowered his head in shame. I failed to notice his sadness and pain whenever he came to visit me. whether it was to clarify something about a jutsu or simply to talk. He always acted as if nothing was wrong. Sometimes, though, I could see the hurt in his eyes. When I asked, he would just say it was nothing, that everything was fine. I never imagined Minato would act this way. I remember how happy he was the night those three were born. I don't know what changed or what happened that made him treat Naruto like that. The only reason Naruto didn't destroy the village was because he saw it as a waste of his time. A rotten shell hiding behind a glorious mask for the outside world. But he saw straight through that mask. So that's how low you've all sunk. Seeing how the son of a Kage was treated, it's not hard to believe, Tsunade muttered bitterly. Now, Minato, I think there's another matter we need to discuss. Just because the one tail and two tails are gone doesn't mean the Akatsuki will stop. They'll come for the rest of the bijou. So what will you do now? Jiraiya asked, watching Minato closely. I'll inform the other Kages, Kumo, Iwa, Kiri, and Takigakure. The Seven Tails is in Taki, so I'll reach out to them as well. Hopefully they'll take action, Minato responded. Kumo, Kiri, and Taki might listen, Jiraiya said. But I doubt Iwa will. There are rumors, unconfirmed, but troubling, that Iwa is recruiting the Akatsuki to carry out high-level missions. And knowing Inoki, he still holds a grudge from the Third War. He might not cooperate. Minato rubbed the bridge of his nose, exhaling slowly. Regardless, as a Kage, it's my duty to act. Whether the other villages take precautions or not is up to them. This threat isn't just to Konoha. It's to all of us. Kushina hesitated for a moment, then asked quietly, So, what do we do about Menma and Mito? Minato's expression hardened. Mito will continue her training and will rotate various teams. As for Menma, I've stripped him of his genin rank. As of now, he's a civilian. Kushina's eyes widened, her voice rising in disbelief. You did what? She shouted. How could you do that, Minato? You saw what happened with Naruto. Are you really going to repeat that? Why would you do this to him? Minato didn't flinch. His voice remained calm but firm. Kushina, calm down and listen to me, please. Once you hear everything, you'll understand, and maybe even agree with me. He walked to his desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a sealed scroll. He handed it to her with a grave expression. This is Jiraiya-sensei's report from the month he trained Menma for the Chunin exams. Kushina took the scroll and quickly recognized Jiraiya's handwriting. She read it line by line, her grip tightening with every word. When she finished, she looked up, conflicted. So, for this you stripped him of his rank? We should have trained him better. We failed him, Minato. You're not wrong, Minato replied, his voice heavy. But Kushina, you're thinking like a mother right now. I need you to think like a Hokage. He took a breath. You read the same report I did. He knows the shadow clone technique, but hasn't improved. I taught Menma and Mito the Rasengan months ago. Mito can form it. He still can't. He sighed, frustration in his voice. The report says it clearly. He's lazy. He doesn't take training seriously. Not missions. Not even himself. He stepped closer, eyes steady. If I let him continue like this, he'll become a burden to his team, or worse, he'll die on a mission. I've already done enough damage by pampering him during his childhood. He couldn't even touch me in a sparring match where I fought at an academy student's level. So tell me, he continued, his tone filled with pain but resolve. Should I give in to my feelings as a father and let him keep the rank? Or should I act as a Hokage and as a real father, by making the hard choice that might keep him alive? Kushina was silent for a long moment. Then she slowly nodded. You're right. I hate it, but you're right. Does he know? Minato nodded. I gave him 1 month to prove himself. If I see even the slightest improvement, I'll let him retake the exam. But make no mistake, we're both at fault here. Especially me. He looked away, ashamed. I abused my position as Hokage to push him through the academy. The truth is, he should never have passed. He turned back to her, eyes tired. If you still have doubts, Test him yourself when we get home. At the Namikaze household, Tsunade, Shizune, Jiraiya, Kushina, and Minato stepped into the Namikaze home. As soon as they entered, Minato called out, "Menma, Mito, come here." A few moments later, both children arrived. Mito's eyes were red and puffy, clear tear marks staining her cheeks. Menma, on the other hand, stormed in with anger burning in his eyes. Tsunade watched the two quietly, studying them. It was her first time meeting Minato's children in person. The moment Menma spotted Jiraiya, his fury boiled over. Why did you do that to me?" he shouted, before suddenly charging toward him. "Menma, that's enough," Minato ordered sharply. But Menma didn't listen. He swung a fist at Jiraiya, who easily sidestepped, dodging the attack with grace and calm, his expression unreadable. The scene almost turned comical, like a monkey flailing at a mountain, as Menma kept lunging and missing. Before Minato could step in, chakra chains shot across the room, wrapping tightly around Menma's body and lifting him clean off the ground. He froze, eyes wide, as he turned to see his mother. Kushina stood silently, her hair beginning to lift slightly with her rising chakra. She looked furious, more terrifying than he'd ever seen her. "It seems Jiraiya went easy on you," she said coldly. "He showed mercy. Honestly, even a civilian could fight better than what you just showed." The chains vanished and Menma dropped hard onto the floor. He didn't move, too stunned, too ashamed. "Why are you doing this to me? First Jiraiya, then Dad, and now you. Why is everyone acting like this?" shouted Menma, his voice shaking with anger. "Are you really asking that, brat? After making a fool of yourself?" Tsunade snapped. "Who are you supposed to be, you old hag?" Menma yelled back. Jiraiya immediately took a step to the side, avoiding what he knew was coming. Tsunade turned her glare on him, and he trembled under her deadly stare. "Haim, I think if you pummel him now, he'll die," Jiraiya said nervously. Tsunade sighed. "You're probably right." She turned back to the two siblings. "Hey, you two brats. I'll ask you one question. Answer me truthfully, or else you can ask your father what my punches feel like." Menma and Mito both froze in shock. "You dare threaten our father, the Hokage?" Menma shouted. "Be glad I didn't kill him for what he did," Tsunade replied coldly. "And who even are you?" Menma demanded. "You really are pathetic," said Tsunade sharply. "Even a civilian could tell who I am." "Idiot," Mito interjected, glaring at her brother. "That's Tsunade Senju, one of the legendary Sannin, granddaughter of the first Hokage, and grandniece of the second. So what? Just because you're a Sannin and related to the first and second Hokage doesn't mean you can just beat up the Hokage and threaten him," shouted Menma, anger flashing in his eyes. Tsunade exhaled deeply, irritation creeping into her voice. "Kushina, please, educate this brat before I lose my temper." "Menma, Mito," Kushina said sternly, stepping in. "Listen carefully. Tsunade is unofficially your godmother, and she's also my cousin." "What?" Both Mito and Menma shouted in unison, their voices filled with disbelief. "Enough of this nonsense," Tsunade cut in sharply. "Now answer my question. Tell me, what made you two treat Naruto the way you did? Why did you hate him? Has he ever done anything to deserve that from either of you?" Her gaze hardened as it settled on Menma. "And you, brat, just because you can't achieve anything quickly doesn't give you the right to play the victim and make Naruto look bad in your father's eyes." Menma stiffened but said nothing, eyes fixed on the floor. Tsunade turned to Mito. "And you, girl, you carry the name of your great-great-grandmother, yet you've acted nothing like her. So tell me, why did you hate him?" I didn't hate him," Mito whispered, tears forming in her eyes. "But I never showed him the love I should have. I stayed silent when Mom ignored him, when Dad hated him. I didn't stand up for him when he was alone." Her voice broke, trembling with regret. I was a terrible sister to him. I just wish I could see him again, to tell him I'm sorry. If only I had spoken up back then, maybe none of this would have happened. Tsunade's expression softened. I believe you, she said quietly. Both Mito and Menma looked up, surprised. What do you mean? They asked together. It's what Naruto said to me, Tsunade replied gently. That you live in the shadows of your perfect world, a world built around Menma. Mito's breath hitched. You met him? Please, tell me where he is, she begged, tears rolling freely down her cheeks. I need to see him, to make things right. What about you, brat? Tsunade demanded, her tone sharp and unwavering. She gave her answer. Now it's your turn. Why are you all supporting him? Menma shouted, voice brimming with anger and confusion. He turned toward Minato and Kushina, eyes blazing. All these years you ignored him, and now that he's gone, you're suddenly showing him the love you never gave before. What changed? Is it because he's powerful now? Minato and Kushina lowered their heads, unable to face him, guilt weighing heavily on their expressions. Menma's voice quivered, but his words cut deep. I don't have any reason for what I did. I did it because it was funny. Silence fell over the room. The faint sound of cicadas chirping outside filled the air. Kushina's breath hitched. Minato's gaze sharpened with regret. Tsunade clenched her fist, barely restraining herself from punching Menma into oblivion. Mito stood frozen in shock. Jiraiya stared, horrified, thinking about how tragic his beloved student's family had become. Shizen gasped, placing a trembling hand over her mouth, while Taunton squinted its eyes, sensing the tension thick in the air. And he continued, voice cracking with some foreign feeling and bitterness. Every time Dad slapped him, no one cared. If I cried and pointed at Naruto, Dad would hit him, no questions asked. Mom never stopped it, and Mito just stayed silent, even when she saw it. His confession hit Minato, Kushina, and Mito like a physical blow, the truth sinking into the air like a shadow. No one spoke, the silence itself felt suffocating. Finally, Menma muttered almost defensively, and I still think he used some secret scrolls to train. Tell me, how else could he have killed Orochimaru? What was that technique he used that day? No one knows. He must have found something forbidden. That's the only explanation. Mito rolled her eyes. Again with the scrolls, she mumbled. Jiraiya leaned forward, amusement and impatience in his voice. Brat, do you even know a person can invent their own jutsu? He let the question hang, then jabbed with a grin. Oh wait, maybe you don't, because your dad pampered you like a glass doll. His tone shifted from teasing to serious. The Rasengan is your father's creation. The technique Naruto used against Orochimaru could very well be one of his own. People make jutsu all the time. They don't need secret scrolls for everything. He tapped the floor with the tip of his shoe, warning clear in his eyes. And if I hear you bring up secret scrolls one more time, I swear I don't know what I'll do. Tsunade's lips twitched into a dangerous smirk. The room held its breath. Menma's bravado faltered as the veteran shinobi closed in with their combined, undeniable presence. You know, Tsunade said coldly, folding her arms, never in my life have I seen a spoiled brat like you, nor did I ever imagine one could exist. What happened to you, Minato, Kushina? How could you raise him to be like this? Minato and Kushina bowed their heads in shame. Do you think Naruto would accept my apology? Mito asked quietly, her voice weak and trembling from crying. Tsunade sighed. I don't know, Mito. I truly don't. Haim, Jiraiya spoke up, his expression serious. I think they should know what's happening. You're right, Tsunade replied after a brief pause. Then, following several minutes of explanation, the room fell silent once more. So you're saying they might attack at any moment? Mito asked, her eyes wide. And if the Ninetales is extracted from us, we'll die? Tsunade nodded gravely. If that's the case, Mom, how did you survive the extraction process? Mito asked faintly. Kushina took a deep breath. After sealing the 9 tails in both of you, your dad gathered the traces of its chakra lingering in the air and sealed them within me. That's the only reason I lasted as long as I did. My Uzumaki heritage kept me alive for a few hours. Otherwise, I would have died immediately. Mito wiped her tears and stared at her mother. So what will you do now? Will you train us to fight the Akatsuki? Notice, Jiraiya corrected her sternly. What do you mean by that? Won't you train Menma too? Mito asked. It's up to your father, Jiraiya replied reluctantly. We can't train civilians. Dad. Mito turned to Minato in shock. You stripped Menma of his genin rank? Yes, Minato answered, his voice solemn. The reason is simple. He can't defend himself. You saw for yourself a few minutes ago how much he struggled. Ryaman. Naruto sat at the large oak table, maps and documents spread out before him, while Haku and Zabuza sat across from him. Sunlight streamed through the wide windows, bathing the room in a warm, golden glow. The polished surface of the table reflected the light softly, illuminating the spread of maps and notes. Can you tell us why you don't want to form alliances with the bigger villages? Zabuza asked, his tone steady but curious. Simple, Naruto replied, his gaze fixed on the map. They'll impose conditions, all crafted to serve themselves, not us. Besides, we can't predict when these nations will turn their kunai on each other. If we're allied with them, we'd be dragged into their wars, and I don't like that one bit. Haku nodded, joining in. That may be true, but we also lack military strength. The 3 of us can't be the ones doing all the fighting. We need a stable infrastructure, a proper defense force, and most importantly, a self-sustaining economy. The village can't keep surviving off Roiman Industries forever. Naruto glanced up, a faint smile forming. You make a fair point, Haku, but even if we wanted to form alliances with the bigger nations, who would trust a village that's only a few months old? He leaned forward, tracing lines on the map with his finger. Look at our options. IWA would never agree. I look too much like Minato. They'd reject any offer before I even spoke. Kumos know better. When I was 3, a Kumo ambassador tried to kidnap the Hyuga heiress and was killed by her father. The Third Reikage threatened war, but Minato didn't back down. Since then, there's been deep tension, and we have no idea what kind of man the Fourth truly is. His voice lowered, laced with disdain. As for Konoha, it's better we don't even speak of them. Their council is the worst kind of viper's nest. He paused before continuing. Kirigakure might be an option, but I suspect Mei would only agree if she got something in return. Likely you, Zabuza. Zabuza grunted in amusement. Humph. Wouldn't be the first time Mei tried to make a deal at my expense. And Suna? Haku asked quietly. Suna won't even consider it, Naruto said flatly. They still hate me for killing the Kazekage's children. An alliance with them is out of the question. For a long moment, silence filled the room, the weight of harsh truths settling in. So, what do you say? Zabuza asked, breaking the silence. I suggest we start by forming alliances with smaller villages, Naruto replied. It'll give us stability and mutual support without attracting unnecessary attention, and they won't try to control us like the major ones would. Wouldn't they ask for something in return? Haku asked cautiously. Yes, Naruto said with a faint smile. But there's one country that will sign a treaty with us without hesitation. That statement caught both Zabuza and Haku's attention. Which country? They asked almost in unison. The Land of Waves, Naruto answered confidently. Haku tilted his head. You mean the bridge builder's country? Naruto nodded. Ever since I saved them from Gato, they've been deeply grateful. I'm certain they'll agree to an alliance. In return, we can provide them with construction contracts for developing this village. It'll generate income for them and reinforce our own infrastructure. If needed, we can also offer ninja protection services in the future. Zabuza crossed his arms, considering it. It's a sound plan, he admitted, but I still think we should consider forming alliances with actual shinobi villages too. I agree, Naruto said with a slight nod, and I already have one in mind. Zabuza and Haku exchanged curious looks. Which one? They asked together. Nadeshiko Village, Naruto answered, his tone calm but deliberate. Zabuza raised an eyebrow while Haku smiled faintly, both intrigued by the unexpected choice. The village made up entirely of kunoichi? Haku asked, a bit surprised. Why them? Do you really think they'd agree to an alliance with us? Naruto leaned back in his chair, calm and thoughtful. Because they're like us, he said. Independent, isolated. They've survived without relying on the great villages for years, just like we're trying to do now. Zabuza crossed his arms. That doesn't mean they'll welcome outsiders, especially not men. Naruto nodded. True, but Nadeshiko values strength, conviction, and mutual respect. If we approach them properly, offer fair terms and show them we're not just another power-hungry faction, they might be willing to listen. Haku tilted his head slightly. And what exactly do we offer them? Trust, Naruto answered firmly. We can build a bond through trade, knowledge exchange, and mutual support. Our village already has a growing number of kunoichi. We can ask Nadeshiko to help train them. In return, we can provide supplies, resources, and protection when needed. A partnership, not dependence. He looked between the two. So, what do you say? Haku frowned slightly. It sounds promising, but from what I've heard, they don't exactly trust men. The three of us showing up might not go well. Naruto gave a small nod of agreement. That's exactly why we need to approach this carefully. We'll plan thoroughly, choose the right words, maybe even the right people to make the first contact. And in the meantime, we should keep exploring alliances with other smaller villages too. Zabuza smirked. You're really thinking like a Kage kid. I think you should ask Lady Tsunade for help, Haku suggested thoughtfully. She saw for herself what's happening here, and I think you made a good impression on her. Naruto looked at him, intrigued. Go on. She's highly respected across all the nations. If someone like her vouches for us when we approach Nadeshiko, it'll make a huge difference. Her reputation alone could prevent them from reacting with suspicion or hostility. Naruto gave a small smile. You really are a genius, Haku. Thank you, Naruto-san, Haku replied with a modest nod. Then, his tone shifted as he continued thinking aloud. Also, we should start cultivating exotic plants and rare medicinal herbs. It'll help us develop our own trade goods, not just for import, but for export too. That way, we build an economy that's self-sustaining and valuable to others. Naruto nodded in agreement. You've got a good eye for this. Since you already have knowledge in medicine, I'm putting you in charge of that project. Haku smiled warmly and bowed his head slightly. Thank you, Naruto-san. I won't let you down. I appreciate your trust. Any other business? Naruto asked. We need our own spy network, Zabuza said flatly.